Hello everyone, welcome to What If Cid Kagenou Lost His Humanity and Became Terrifying Part 4. Before we start, please go support Wixter12 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Cid is a male. Chapter 24-25. Time passed slowly but noticeably. I was sitting next to Hannah and I extended my two legs so I could sit in a more comfortable position. The air, the oxygen, everything was normal again. The gravity surprisingly no longer hurt or was strong, but the environment was very strange. Despite there not being much difference from the outside, the environment had that feeling of somewhere else. I could think of any place but none outside. It simply had an aura of disturbing loneliness. There was nothing around. The noise was practically non-existent. Sounds as simple as birds stepping on the vehicles of this world. The wind itself did not blow. There was only an imperturbable silence that surrounded us. I looked at my right arm, trying to analyze what had happened in this short period of time. I dealt with the shortage of oxygen as we descended further and further into the center of what seemed to be the town itself. I had two options. The center was long, and therefore it was only going to take us a long time to descend. In that case, I was patient, and I could explore the place. Even I would think that some monster or guiding creature or a common NPC would appear. The second option was that the center would be longer than normal, and there would start to be natural problems such as oxygen becoming scarcer or pressure and heat that would be too much. In that case, it would only be enough to form a barrier, and I could resist with the help of my magic without problems. The second option seemed to be the right one in my ideas. I made the plan I had in mind, and everything went quite well. As soon as we descended to a deep degree, I began to notice the lack of oxygen each time. Probably I could bear it, but Hannah had no guarantee that I could. In that case, I formed the barrier as I had planned. As I progressed, I needed to use more magic to keep the barrier active. Because it seemed that gravity was increasing, luckily I stored the oxygen in a kind of bubble, which could help us breathe, an oxygen bubble enclosed in the magic barrier that I created with my magic power. When the depth was greater, I began to notice something strange. We had been moving forward for a long time, and I had the feeling that we had barely advanced. When I realized and tried to let out a sigh, the sigh was slow. When Hannah spoke, the speech was slower. Apparently the weather was also being affected by the decline. Before, in my old world while studying, I had heard of some strange phenomena in chemistry classes. I never really paid much attention, but there were topics that caught my attention besides magic and how to use it. For example, a little bit of physics for some things, but the most basic of basic, or what really interested me. I used to watch series programs where there were types of powers to vary their use. But something that always interested me were the laws of physics, which were described by the great scientists of their time. I read about things that can and cannot be done and how they work. I was interested in that because if I was going to become the eminence in the shadows, then I needed to know how to counteract such measures and prove that nothing could stop me. When I entered this world, I was only looking for power and power. Once I obtained a part of what I craved for power, I began my second goal apart from power: perfect magical control. I continued developing techniques but also focused on magical control. After all, there are so many things you can do with magic that if I had to count them, I would never finish such a long list of ideas. So I gradually selected my favorite cliches or my own techniques that I would normally say, "Oh, that's great." When I noticed that time was slower, I made up a little theory. The theory of gravitational dilation. Albert Einstein. Gravitational time dilation occurs when gravity distorts space-time, causing time to pass more slowly. For example, time passes faster at the top of a mountain than at sea level. However, the effect of gravitational time dilation is relative and very small. For example, if one person lives on the 100th floor of a building and another on the ground floor, they won't be able to notice the difference in the passage of time. Of course, a building is not the same as the surface of the earth, because surprisingly, even the shallow depth of the sea equals the largest buildings in the world, and the surface and the center of the earth are different, and therefore the difference is even greater in time. There is even a possibility that time itself could be affected by its very concept. Is that possible? Perhaps no one has ever lived to experience what is extreme. No one has traveled to a place further than we humans have been able to travel. If the time dilation theory as I recall is correct, then it means we are really deep, but if this were my world, did we just get here by walking? I mean, if time is starting to drag so much and I'm walking down, why does it feel like it wasn't even 2 hours since I started going down? Something else is happening. Something accelerated the process to get to the center. It makes no sense to get to the center in a short time, even I knew it. Which means some strange phenomenon is happening? Interesting, this is getting more and more interesting. It was really a good idea to come to this site. For a few moments I held my arm and squeezed it. I was really close to the brink of death. Probably if I hadn't been pulled by Hannah to the barrier, it would have been very difficult for me to get out. It's even likely that I would have broken my bones. I doubt I could die from something like that. But it would certainly be more difficult for me. I really don't like this. Someone helping me means that I need help to overcome an obstacle. Which means that even for me there are things I can't deal with. Normally that would excite me more. That would give me inspiration to train more. Would I even have 7 or 10 plans? New techniques, new tricks, better mastery, but normally I would like to deal with them on my own, having help from others. It's not something I ever considered. I guess I have to thank you. How long has it been since someone other than Alpha helped me on a mission? Almost 4 years, although I started my journey in search of power and doing it all alone. A help. If the time dilation theory is correct, then we need a power that surpasses time itself. My powers don't scale to stopping time or surpassing it yet. Can I probably do dimensional cuts? Can I do an atomic explosion? That's definitely within my limits. But something like time is on another level. This reminds me of when in my old life for me it was unattainable, a supreme power that could defeat all the weapons in the world, even if I was the greatest karate fighter or champion, even if I mastered all the martial arts in the world and had the perfect body, even with weapons, an army would beat me up. I reached the power that now cuts my limits, and another obstacle stands in my way. That only gives me more enthusiasm. The power of a person can have no limits. I still have a lot to grow after all. I will reach a point where not even time can stop me. And surely something else would exist to prevent me from moving forward. Everything must be considered. It's funny, isn't it? I focused my attention on Hannah, who had broken the silence. Originally, I didn't want to accompany you to this place because I thought it wouldn't help at all. After all, there have been many occasions in which I have caused you problems, and I cannot solve a problem by myself. Hannah exclaimed, lowering her head. Actually, why would I accompany you? Why am I following you on this trip in the first place? At first, I thought it was because you were the only person I saw outside as soon as I came out. You could have killed me, but you didn't, but I felt a strange feeling coming from you. Despite that, I clung to being by your side because I was afraid of being alone. As time passed, I only wanted one thing, to die. There was no point in staying in this place, but I couldn't because I had a promise to keep to stay alive. What was I going to do as soon as I left the place that I thought was impossible to leave for the first time? I was going to be on the street, thrown away. Surely another orphanage would look for me, and it would only be the same. I would be kidnapped again by some weirdos. What was the point of living like this? I thought that maybe you could end this suffering if you refused to accept me. If you killed me, why did I bother you? It would not be my fault after all. I could finally die in peace. Did she really think I was going to murder a little girl I found in a strange place I happened upon by chance? I mean, I was like the eminence in the shadows, and I understand that there are people who fear me. In fact, I like it because it means I play my role very well. But did he really think I was going to be such a cruel guy? Sometimes I noticed that you gave off that strange feeling of loneliness, but also a murderous aura. You told me that you could perfectly kill me whenever you could, the cruel reality. You showed me more and more things about the world and how everything worked. When I thought you were going crazy, I was afraid. I wanted to die, but my body refused to do it. My mind wanted to, but my body denied it, and tried to convince me. It's funny, but the mind and body are two separate beings. You could perfectly well tell me right now, I didn't lie to you, I still want to kill you, or something like that. But I wouldn't fall into that trap anymore. Your intention was never to kill me or hurt me. What are you talking about? If your intention was to hurt me or kill me from the first day or the first week, you would have done something to me, but on the contrary, you continued to take care of me despite the fact that I was causing you discomfort. You even went to the trouble of trying to teach me how to steal." Hannah continued with her head down while holding her legs. "Every time I heard you say something cruel, I waited for that opportunity. I looked for you to do it, and it never came. I tried to provoke you despite the fear that it generated in me. Because you generated a great fear in me, and I thought that you did it with the intention that if I did not get away from you as soon as possible, something horrible was going to happen to me. I believed it, but that's why I did not run away. But more and more time passed, and it became heavy for me. You did nothing. I began to provoke you despite the fact that I was afraid of you with the intention of you doing it, but you did nothing. At that moment, the vision I had of you that you were a bad guy who had only saved me by chance and pity began to go away. Each time I despaired knowing that truth, because if that was true, it meant that eventually it would happen again. I would have another place to be, and sooner or later I was going to lose everything again, and my desire was going to go away. It's true, from the beginning I wasn't looking to adopt this girl. I thought she was really going to leave on her own, but it didn't happen. I tried to make her see an image of me and convince her to eventually leave me, but it didn't work. I resorted to threats, but neither did I. Abuse didn't come to mind because even for me it would be too much. I was just looking for a reason for her to get away from me, that was all, but it didn't happen. I began to show her the reality. I tried to break something, but it didn't work either. The fact that she realized it, I must admit that it is impressive. The only thing I've heard from her is that she wants to die. Apparently I was her way out. It certainly is a sad thing that such a small person seeks death instead of enjoying life, isn't it? However, it's not something I can solve if I don't know. It's not possible, that's all. I didn't realize. No, maybe I denied that I didn't really want to die. It's logical. Why would anyone want to die? No one in this world, not even the most depressing person in the world, seeks death, fears death, wants something to kill him, can't do it himself because he doesn't have the courage, doesn't want it, wants an accident to happen. That's all. Those who do are unique cases. Your vision is quite accurate. A person could never kill themselves. They don't have the courage. In my old life, suicides were something normal in Japan. Normally they were cases of people taking pills or something that could kill them, accidents or murders. The cases where they cut themselves were rare, and if they existed, they were people who probably did it quickly and in a soft spot to avoid suffering. Those people were mentally strong, but they are rare. They must have such a determined mind, so rotten that they could do it. But Hannah is just a child. Although she can think and believe that she wants to die, she really doesn't want to die. She thinks it's her body, she thinks it's the promise, but it's nothing like that. As time went by with you, you showed me horrible things. You are a bad example. Are you really going to tell me that now? But you also showed me another side of you and this worldview. I think the me I used to know before, or the me everyone expected, no longer exists. You finally broke what bound you, right? The strange promise you'd mentioned so much. I mentioned those words, and Hannah confirmed my question by nodding her head. I really thought I would never see him like that again, that something was going to interest me so much. I thought that possibility no longer existed, and that's why I didn't want it anymore. But you showed me the possibility that I thought was never going to happen. I really thank you for all of this. Those crimson eyes of the little girl began to descend a few tears. Her gaze had not changed. Normally she could fake her emotions. She used it for some things that could be useful, but she didn't like to do it. Her true expression was an unknown that described nothing. Her poker face that gave off nothing, and that shell still remained firm, but something in her was changing. Maybe she still can't smile. But if she can shed tears for something personal, it is an advance in any human being, even the lowest person in the world. It's okay. It's not like I did anything very special anyway. Really having company, like 3 years ago, I stopped seeing it as necessary, but I also forgot the fact that having someone is important too, I suppose. I no longer know what it is like to have someone important by my side, but I can understand a little the people who do know it, and need it. They are open books after all. Knowing what they express, knowing what they want, what hurts them, is something that they almost whisper in your ear. You know, no matter what you think right now, you're probably not the nicest person in the world. But I'm really glad to know I can help. You're being a little cloying, aren't you? You don't think I'm some kind of god who saves your life, or my savior, or anything like that? To be honest, I've had enough of girls looking at me like that. If someone else saw me like that, I don't think I could stand the comfort of home anymore. A divinity? I don't believe any of that. You're weird, greedy, it makes me laugh when you lose your gold, and I really think you're still a bad example. A hero by stealing? But a hero by saving? Cid started getting annoyed when Hannah started telling him all the things he wasn't good at and hit him on the head, making Hannah touch her head with her only hand expressionless. Okay, that's enough. Just because I thank you doesn't mean I see you as someone without mistakes. You're human. Don't let your ego get to you, brother. Better not say anything anymore. But you don't have to be. After all, if you make a mistake, I just have to cover it up, don't I? And if I can't, then I don't need to. Normally when I pretend to be a mob, people notice my mistakes because I do it in a way that they notice, even the natural mistakes that I have sometimes, and I usually improvise. When I am the eminence in the shadows, I try to make my role perfect. When I am Agent Smith, to be the best detective. Someone who knows how I really am and tells me about my mistakes is unusual. It helps me improve. Girls are usually very strange with me. They get into their role well, but they tell me a lot of compliments. Thank goodness Hannah is not like that and does not get into her role of over-exaggerating. After all, she is a girl. She is a rookie NPC. She is not someone who has the knowledge to act like girls. What memories? Since when did I start seeing people this way? Since when did I start seeing everyone as NPCs, characters that were only irrelevant to me and my life in general? From the moment I started treating people with a role as if they were characters and not as what they are. That was because if I wanted to achieve my goal of being the eminence in the shadows, I was forbidden as a goal to get attached to someone that would give me obstacles and prevent me from moving forward. Okay, enough resting, can you get up? Yeah. Hannah got up from the ground, nodding. Cid had physically recovered from the fatigue imposed on him by being in gravity for so long. Although his muscles were still tense, he only began to warm up a little to move around. I guess time in this place is no longer an impediment since we crossed that strange blue thing, Hannah mentioned, referring to the kind of portal from which they both had entered. Naturally, when you are so low on the ground, you can feel the reduction of time. It is called the law of dilation. Law of dilation? In short, it's a natural part of the world. Time slows down the more you go down or up. Wait, but if we come to see the center of the voice of destiny, right? Doesn't that mean that that place was probably located too deep for the laws here to have any influence? But how do you know that? I don't know this planet or this world 100% of its laws, but at least where I got the information from probably dictated it that way. It's different here. I don't know how their laws are judged here and if the planet even has a center or something else. Paying attention to that part of chemistry helped me a lot. So this part is natural too? I don't know, but at least I think we reached our destination. I understand. There was no way we were going to get there if we continued sitting in this area without doing anything. If we were already here, we had to keep moving forward, no matter what the reason. An elf with long yellow hair was sorting some papers while doing her work as usual. She now lived in an apartment after all. This was a plan so that the Midgar school could be as close to her as possible. She had to temporarily move from Alexandria to this place. With the money she had, this was easy, but she learned from that person that not standing out was the best, therefore it is an apartment like any other. Exams are in 16 days. The others studied and shouldn't have any complications, although I'm worried about Delta and Ada. Delta hasn't been making significant progress, and Ada just keeps falling asleep during exams despite all the knowledge she has. I'll have to push them tomorrow morning. Alpha was tidying up the room in the apartment where she lived. While she was tidying up, she found a strange, familiar stuffed animal lying around. When she looked at it, the elf bent down to pick it up. That stuffed animal had an appearance similar to Shadow's, but it was a pet/dog version which was exclusive to the 7 Shadows only. Ganma had created this as an attempt to improve the self-esteem of all his companions, who continued to worry about their leader day by day, more than that the love they had for him. At first only Beta and Ganma had one Beta because it helped her sleep better on nights when she couldn't sleep well, sometimes because of bad dreams. When Shadow couldn't tell her story, she just hugged that stuffed animal and remembered her master, that her master would always be there for her, and that her master would always take care of her. Ganma did it especially because she liked sleeping with stuffed animals, and what better than to replicate an image of the person she admired most in the world and the genius who helped her with business, Shadow, who also helped her a lot to have better dreams. That girl thought that if the others could feel her weaknesses and just look at that stuffed animal, they could feel as if they were with Shadow himself, and Shadow himself would only say his same phrase that always calms each of them without hesitation. I don't think I'm that strong when it's my turn to deal with everything. I guess you expected more from me as a leader. But I want you to know that I will not give up and I will fulfill your mission until the end no matter what. That's why please Shadow, come back soon. Alpha left Shadow's stuffed animal, while a small smile formed on her face and took her chest, remembering the most important person to her. This time that elf had no more doubts in her heart. She intended to improve and learn from her past mistakes, but above all, to become a natural leader that her master would not be disappointed in. An elf with long blue pigtails was looking at herself in the mirror carefully. The elf named Epsilon began her morning body inspection whenever she could to find the imperfections that were possible to make sure she eliminated them herself. Something that was necessary so that she could have the perfect beauty and be worthy of her master. Her proportions had not changed much except a little her height since she was 12 years old. That displeased her. She dreamed of having perfect hips, of having a body good enough that the only person in this world who could see her other than herself could see her. She dreamed of having the widest front than any of her classmates who stood out in that very thing. She didn't only want to focus on that, but on her overall beauty and an attitude in which her teacher would one day fall for her charms. Slime on my thighs, on my breasts, on my legs. Maybe I should put a little on my stomach? I don't think that amount is enough. Do I look small? Should I expand my slime boots a little to give me more height? No, I think I'm fine like this. Perfect. Her inspection had ended. She also lived in an apartment in the city of Midgar. All 7 shadows had their own apartments where they lived alone, each one except for Delta, who denied that proposal. She was comfortable in Alexandria and did not mind coming from that place to Midgar daily as a race in the mornings, although that sometimes made her late. She finished using the slime she was using, which took off from her body to reveal her true nature. The girl was nothing more than a mirror of what truly showed the world an illusion. Those perfect hips, that perfect butt, even the front. Everything was false, this product of her fear. The fear of falling behind her companions, the fear that her master does not judge her as someone beautiful enough, the fear that she might not be taken into account. Phew, I think the day's work was a bit complicated, but it doesn't matter. Now I need to study for the exams coming up in 2 weeks, although I still have time. I stood there for a few moments thinking, what could I do? I wasn't doing badly in school, my grades were decent enough, and physically I improved my body as always to make Beta jealous. I didn't have much to spend my time on. Alpha Sama brought us together a lot on missions, and we went on spy missions which kept us away from our undercover work. When I got home I had no idea what to do next. Without Shadow Sama this is very different. Could you try to prepare something for him when he gets back? A gift or a present? I'm sure he'd like a gift. I've never thought about giving him something, but it's been many days since he hasn't returned to Midgar. I should probably give him something as soon as I get back that will put him in a better mood. Yes, I will do that without a doubt. Epsilon gave a smile as she put on her clothes. Once she removed all her slime and makeup, she went to a chair to sit down while trying to think of what could come to mind to give to her teacher. Among so many thoughts she remembered that tournament where the 7 shadows faced each other in turns to see who would go first to visit Shadow. That tournament had certainly left her a little affected due to her performance, that she herself considered. I tried to practice and improve my power, but I haven't been able to advance much. I'm at my best fencing and I don't have anything to help me advance or any new technique to learn. In magic and defense it's more of the same. It's just putting strange names to techniques of the same power that don't give me advantages. I should at least try to be stronger. I don't like the idea of being one of the last to see Shadow Sama, but I can't do much against Delta-san or Alpha Sama either. Epsilon sighed exhausted and hit her cheeks. No, that's not important. I'd better focus on getting ahead of the others in other ways. If I can't be one of the first to see Shadow-sama, then I'll give him something that he truly likes and can make him happy. Shadow-sama's happiness is the most important of all after all. An elf with short albino hair and a small braid in her hair was writing on some white sheets, throwing all the sheets. In general, her room was a mess of multiple sheets of paper which she was already on the floor. I can't get any ideas no matter how hard I try to imagine them. Beta gave a long sigh and took one of the many sheets he had with him. This sheet had a drawing which was a handsome man carrying a damsel in distress. The text that could be seen was only one, like so many cliché novels in this world, the protagonist saving the woman and winning her heart. That drawing was inspired by Shadow. Without Shadow-sama to observe his movements, I have no inspiration. Beta kept trying to recreate something but just gave up in the end, tired of having to keep trying something he just couldn't do. What should I do? Beta fell on her knees, resting her head on them. She was totally out of ideas now about what she could do. Unlike other times where she simply got stressed out and threw everything out like she used to, this time she couldn't do it. A strange feeling invaded her heart. Not being so close to the person she considered the person she swore to love for the rest of her life hurt her. The inspiration she had to draw or write was totally scarce. The only thing she could do was unfold that pain in her story, affecting the way she had originally planned. She didn't like that for a story. She took a photo that she had on her desk, which was of Cid in his Midgar school outfit, a photo taken by her from many others, printed on paper. She looked at that paper only as if looking for an answer. What would you do, Shadow-sama? Please tell me what to do now. I promised to be strong, but even as the days go by I can't even keep that promise. Every day it gets harder not to be able to look at you. Beta looked at that leaf, while he just resigned himself. However, a memory invaded his mind. Have you thought about how he feels? Have you thought about the fact that he has to carry everything alone? That must be cruel, very cruel, even for Basu. When something happens, what do? We look for the boss, but we never stop to think, does the boss need us? What's wrong with him? Did he even have a good day? Those words that her partner had mentioned, along with the speech that had given her the courage to confront her leader, those words that the leader herself had previously said, the promise that she would do everything possible to improve everything for Shadow's sake, each one was probably doing the same thing. Delta-san is right. I can't just sit and wait for Shadow-sama to come back and tell me that everything will be okay. After all, he always helps me. He's always there when I need him. When I have nightmares, he always reads me stories to help me sleep better. He helps me even when I don't really need him. That's why I can't allow myself to just cry and wait for him to solve everything. I need to show him that he can count on me too. Maybe I won't be very useful, but that he can look at me when something happens and that I can ease the burden that he always carries with him. Beta gave a smile as she stood up and took the photo she had of Cid Kagenou. That photo was delicately placed by Beta on her desk as she extended her arms to flex them. She had regained the sparkle in her eyes once again. A new, unusual motivation as a writer arose in her without hesitation. The wind began to blow over a small group of hooded figures. Those hooded figures were none other than the Zeta group and their faction. They were as usual watching the place where Shadow was. When Shadow crossed the place towards where the center was, all traces and communications of Shadow and Hannah had disappeared and the detection team had lost sight of him. Huh! What was it? What's up, 54? The magical trace I had of Shadow-sama has. What does it mean? The trail we had on Shadow has completely disappeared when he crossed that strange door. I can't feel anything, nor any magical interruptions. That conversation was heard by Zeta, who looked at his subordinates with slight annoyance. Rumors indicated that this place was hiding something strange, Master. It could be you, but the Master is not yet in a position to seize such a dangerous adventure. It could be risky considering what happened last time when the attack occurred in his apartment. It is dangerous to have no trace of him. Stop talking, try to find the target's location at all costs. Team 2 should inspect all possible sites until they find the whereabouts. If anyone discovers something, they must notify the others. It is strictly forbidden to advance if the site is discovered. Understood, Zeta-sama. The entire Zeta faction bowed slightly to their leader and separated from each other to cover more areas. Zeta was not far behind and also began inspecting the place. A girl with long white pigtails and an institutional high school uniform with the representative logo of that Midgar Academy was walking through the halls next to a girl with long dark hair wearing the same uniform and crimson eyes. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" "It is. That is definitely not my brother. He is hiding something," the black-haired girl with crimson eyes expressed as she continued walking. She had a long chain with her that left the white-haired girl impressed since although she used to mistreat her partner, this was different. "Just don't overreact. We need answers, that's all." Yes, whatever you say. I want to ask that damn scammer who is pretending to be my brother what he knows about him," Claire said while gritting her teeth in annoyance. "And to think that he only realized it because of a necklace that Pachi originally had and this apparent Pachi doesn't have it with him. Sometimes it scares me to think what the hell he does to find out how his brother is." Both walked down the hallway at school, following Cid. He looked away to check, but sometimes they hid. After time passed, the school hour was over and all the students began to leave in the direction of their homes. Claire and Alexia had their objective focused on their sights without letting go. "It's Alexia-san!" A small scandal began to form because Alexia was outside the school walking next to Claire. Such a scandal caught Cid's attention who, upon seeing Alexia and Claire, strange drops of sweat began to run down his body. They are. "Alexia-san, Claire-san, hiya, this is a dream. Alexia-sama, please hear my request. Tisk damn it, I had forgotten that when I leave I would make a scene. I need to get rid of all the misfits, but how?" Alexia tried to move forward, keeping her fake smile next to Claire, who annoyed tried to push everyone out of her way. Looking in the background, Alexia noticed that her classmate was moving faster than normal, which made the albino with pigtails start to get more and more annoyed by the unnecessary attention she was receiving. A high-quality car had arrived at the school. "Well, luckily my driver is here," Alexia thought as she took Claire's hand, who, upon looking at her, was a little surprised by Alexia's action as she began to move forward taking her arm. The driver, who had already left the vehicle, kindly opened the door to the Princess of Midgar. Several began to separate, but others were still holding on. With difficulty both had managed to arrive, but before they could cross, the driver stopped Claire. "She's coming with me." "Understood." Both got into the vehicle, closing the door. The driver also returned to the vehicle and proceeded to drive, leaving the Midgar school behind. "Hey, can you go in the opposite direction?" But why is this happening to Alexia-sama? I need you to follow a boy with short black hair. Is he your boyfriend?" At these words, the albino began to get annoyed while pulling his shirt. This made the driver start to get scared due to the force exerted. "Could you do it?" "Why, yes, it's okay." When she heard the words boyfriend, Claire just ignored the situation. She knew perfectly well that Cid would never go back to the person she was with. After all, Cid was Cid, and he was someone unique to her. Instead, the black-haired girl was completely focused on the apparent fake Cid. "His actions tell me it's him, but something isn't right. He ignores me more often. He hardly pays attention to me. He doesn't slack off. When we go out, he always agrees when normally he forgets or makes up some excuse. And above all, he's not wearing the bracelet I gave him like I told him a year ago. He even smells strange, and he's very punctual. He's acting strange. I don't like his attitude. If it's not someone else, something must be going on. I need to find out what he's hiding." Thanks to Alexia-san's investigation, I've been able to realize many things. First, he acts more stealthily than usual. Second, he's seen leaving in a hurry a lot as if he had something else. Cid, I'll definitely know what you're hiding. As the car moved forward following Cid from behind, Cid's wrist had buzzed, and as it did so, he opened his sleeve a little where he had a device attached to his wrist and began to move faster than normal, trying to find a place to arrive. "What is he doing? Why is he acting like that?" Claire expressed with some confusion as she saw her brother start running away without any sense. "Wait, there's something else." Cid continued running when he felt that a car was starting to follow him in a strange way. He couldn't hide anywhere. He started to increase his speed, and his trail had completely disappeared from the sight of the driver who was following him. Damn, we lost him. Did he go somewhere? But there's no sewer or place to hide so fast. We were following him and I swore he didn't notice. That confirms it for me. Confirm what? He's not my brother. My brother couldn't get out of my presence that fast. If he realized someone was following him, he's so clumsy that he'd just follow his side. He ran and we lost sight of him. Even if he was good at hiding, there was no place where it would be easier to follow his tracks. In a way, you have a point, but he'll come home, I'm sure. I'll just have to wait for him at home. I'll question him right there. I was walking with Hannah down that long hallway with no apparent end. There was absolutely nothing around. Everything was darkness. The small call we had of magic was our only source of light that we carried with us. The further I advanced, my footsteps resonated more in this place. The atmosphere is something very good, I must admit. Can I ask you? Hannah asked with curiosity, but at the same time a little shyness towards the only figure that was accompanying her with her. What do you plan to do with the wish if what those myths say turns out to be true? A little more gold. Hey, you're strange. You'll use such an important wish just to have all the money you want. Why? I have my own reasons. No matter, as long as I can be with you forever, I'll follow you wherever, brother. Let's go wherever, let's travel wherever, it doesn't matter where. Cid tilted his gaze, watching the little girl intently for a few moments. She had a small smile on her face as she took his brown jacket from her forearm. The crimson-eyed boy began to remember a little of his past for a few moments, when he did the same with his older brother, but above all, those programs that always showed that kind of relationships between people that he had read about. Yes, forever. He let out a small and almost non-existent whisper that was not heard by the little girl. In turn, he looked at her again with some empathy for a future action in his subconscious. What's wrong? Did I say something weird, bro? No, we better continue on our way, Hannah. Yeah, I guess that's for the best. Wait, what did you say? Cid continued walking without leaving a gap to answer any of the questions the girl had. To Hannah's surprise, Cid had mentioned her name for the first time. In human time, it had been almost 1 year since Cid left on a trip and 8 months since Cid and Hannah had met. And all the time, the only thing they both did was only travel and travel without rest. They did not eat very well at all, at least on Hannah's part, until Cid decided to give her a little more food so as not to leave her bad and start spending a little something that was not an easy process for him. The only thing Cid longed for was travel, and trip. The girl did not know what he was looking for. The only thing she knew was that when she was next to the person she considered her brother, she felt a strange familiar feeling, a feeling that she had never felt since that day that she remembers with pain. Somehow for that girl, the guy she had met for the first time in her life, who at the beginning was someone very cruel and was not what perhaps the current Hannah would think of her past version, was a relationship that had strengthened deep within both of them. Hannah saw Cid as a familiar figure more than a brother. She could also see him a little like that paternal figure that she didn't have from her memory. It was something that the girl still didn't understand. She only knew that if she was next to that person who, despite that aura of loneliness/latent darkness, for the first time she felt that it was a kind darkness, and not a harmful darkness. In a certain way she couldn't help but become fond of the person who had been dealing with her since the first day. She had been wondering since before being with this person, how long will it last? When will I kill her? How much longer until I lose control again, or my bad luck does everything? I want to be out, I want to get out of that place. I don't want to be locked up anymore. But if I'm with someone for too long, he'll die no matter what. 8 months since, despite everything they both got ahead, even those words and the pain in her heart were slowly left behind. The only thing the little girl focused on was simply her day-to-day, as her brother said, "Your day is your day, the past is the past." In a certain way it had helped her to better assimilate her strength. She still couldn't sleep very well, but she was gradually resuming her normal life. With that person by her side she was no longer alone, and it was something completely strange. I hope this happiness lasts forever. If happiness were the reason why a person could keep a smile, then the smile is the soul of life. Chapter 25. The Ties That Hold. My Destiny. I continued on my way while trying to illuminate a little bit, still uselessly. The magic had disappeared. The second torch had been completely drained before I realized it. The darkness in a certain way was very annoying. Not being able to see anything, but on the other hand the atmosphere is without a doubt very good. But even so, this place has a 4/10 design. Well, well, so you two managed to cross the door that separates this world from the outer plane and survive. When the moon and the red monster cross, there will only be one path to truth in this world. The light of the legendary red moon will be the news of the path to truth. A voice began to resonate in the place. When I tried to look in the directions where that strange voice came from, I couldn't see anyone. The only visible thing was a place completely without any presence above it. My lack of magic hindered my tracking skills, so if it was something else there, I would have a hard time detecting it. When I turned my gaze to look at the other side, I noticed that the sleeve that held my left arm was no longer there. Hannah had disappeared for no apparent reason. When I started walking to try to explore the place, while exploring to look for possible whereabouts of where Hannah was, the steps I made resonated in the place. The space expanded infinitely. Before it went from being a long corridor with rocks and in a straight line without space. A dark place to a gray place which had darkness in the back and gray in the front. The closer I got, the more this place expanded. Was it somehow a place with an infinite landmass? Interesting. Some strange footsteps sounded behind me. I turned my gaze back to check what was there, but there was nothing. Footsteps were heard in front of me. I turned around again to check, but I couldn't see anything at all. Suddenly, that place where I was walking had disappeared. Trying to find the area where I had resided now, my body felt a small warning sign. How strange, why do I feel alert? You killed them, didn't you? A voice with a tone similar to mine had resonated throughout the place. Unlike before, this voice was not generated by my own mind or my subconscious. I had no way to confirm it, but it was what I felt. The place where I was again was changing. Looking around, I was seeing someone with an appearance similar to mine. He was holding some bars with his hands, while in the distance he watched a girl start walking down a dark alley. That girl was kidnapped, and he only came down from the roof of what appeared to be the school. That person, was it me? My dream is to one day become the eminence among the shadows, to hunt in the shadows, to stalk in the shadows no matter what. That is why, even if I must sacrifice everything to become what I aspire to, I will do it. My path begins now. When I tried to reach out my hand towards the figure that looked like me in my old life, my hand only passed through his body. This probably meant that it was a hallucination, not a real fragment of what I was. My father is garbage, my mother treats me distantly, my brother distances himself more and more from me. Studies are simply not my source, even though I try to study as much as I can. It is simply another uninteresting thing that I am not interested in learning in the least. Magic is useless, it does not exist. Martial arts take a long time to learn, and even if I learn them, I cannot know everything. I am vulnerable. Even if I defeat someone very strong, multiple people can beat me, or an army. Weapons can defeat me. Is this pointless? Am I wasting my life? Should I focus on something else like the NPCs are telling me? No, I can't do it, because deep down I know that something must exist, something that will definitely make what I'm dreaming about come true. I still don't know what will happen in the future, but it's what I believe. What if I died before completing my dream? It won't happen, because I know that if it did, nothing would stop me from being the eminence among the shadows that I long for and wish to be with all my being, because the reason for my existence was decided since that dream passed through my eyes. Humans have a goal since birth, and mine is to be the eminence in the shadows. This fragment is only showing me what I have aspired to be from the beginning. I remember that I wanted to be the eminence among the shadows. Now that I have power, that I have magic, that I have the resources, even something more, another world. Why do I feel this emptiness? Even though I have the power I crave, and I can have more power until I never know its limits, I can achieve anything with my mind and body, but why am I still not satisfied? Is it because I lack power? Is it because I lack character and personality, or even the appearance to be the eminence among the shadows? Or simply, I only long for a desire, which I never bothered to investigate what else I wanted to aspire to from the beginning, and I only considered power. Being the eminence in the shadows is synonymous with power, but it shouldn't be that way. Not everything should be power. I aspire to have power to achieve my goals, but if I already have enough power, why am I aspiring to more power? It seems you're already beginning to understand this little reality. A figure with the appearance of Cid Kagenou appeared in front of Cid Kagenou. Reality? Perhaps you haven't noticed it because you've ignored it from the bottom of your heart. After all, you know it, don't you? Emotions are unnecessary. Power is everything. What you aspire to be is a way to escape from the sad reality. It started as a dream like any other child who watches unnecessary television programs. You would say, at 14, I will lose that stupid dream. But you became obsessed with that dream. Because you wanted to escape from reality. You simply didn't want to accept that destiny. The destiny that was imposed on you from the beginning. What are you talking about? You weren't good at anything. You weren't good at studying. You weren't good at socializing. You weren't even good at being ambitious and getting what you wanted. The words of the beings that mattered most to you that you called NPC, you didn't pay attention to. But you listened to them. They resonated inside that small, non-existent heart of yours. You always disappointed others and looked for something to compensate for it. You called NPCs as a way to try to distance others from you because the only thing you were looking for was to simply exist for yourself and only for yourself. Because if you stopped seeing this world as a reality, as you always saw it, you would suffer for never meeting everyone's expectations. Wow, so a copy of me is assuming data that is not concrete. Interesting, it is very interesting. Cid only began to laugh a little at such statements that the copy was making about him. I like how you deny the reality of the facts. You probably don't even remember why you're not Cid Kagenou. What did you say? You call me a copy and you don't even know how naive I am without a doubt. I see that you're not just a poor copy of me, you know everything about me? You must be thinking at this point, this is some villain who is perhaps playing his role well, pretending to be me, falsifying my data to try to break my mind. It must be some new character, it must simply be a hallucination that has no idea. That copy of mine didn't have any wrong answers. I tried to find out if it was hiding something but I couldn't detect any key piece. I am a part of you that you yourself sought to free. Release? I am the representation of those emotions that you forgot and discarded. I am the fragments that you forgot and abandoned. I am the core of what you represent. I am a part of the true name that Cid Kagenou represents. Cid Kagenou longed to be the eminence among the shadows since he was a simple child, not since he was born. His destiny was so strong that he was almost doomed from birth. Why do you think that simply a baby had a dream so strong that even the years did not forget it? Babies have no memory once they turn 4 years old. You were special. It seems that since you were born you were empty. Even though you had a dream, you still tried some things, didn't you? In my past life I tried to be better at other things so I could achieve that dream of being the eminence among the shadows. It's what you would naturally think. But you didn't just want to be the eminence among the shadows, you wanted to be it because you were trying to find a goal, an objective beyond that destiny. You knew of your horrible destiny. And you wanted to try something else, but it was useless. You fell and gave up since you were 12 years old. When you died, did you see that light? Magic? Maybe power? No, it wasn't any of that, but whatever it was something different. And that's what you longed for, something different. When you died and were reincarnated, now your dream could come true. But once you obtained the power you wanted so much, what could you do? You already had everything. You had everything you longed for and dreamed of. Ever then that existential doubt that you asked yourself from the first moment of your life, what will I do once I am the eminence in the shadows? It arrived. You tried to unnecessarily expand your dream. You tried to see things that an eminence in the shadows was, and you committed to achieve. You denied that your dream was so simple and easy to achieve that you were simply forgetting what you originally sought. Power. That is, you are not Cid Kagenou. You no longer have the original goal that you set for yourself since you longed for it. You only wanted to be someone great, to have power and to be called the eminence in the shadows and do what an eminence in the shadows does. Now you are someone with a different mind but with the memories that you had. You long for the dream that Minoru could not fulfill in life, but you are not him. Your existence is committed to a dream of a person who no longer exists in this world. In this world you have the opportunity that you didn't have in the other. To have another path, but you didn't want to see beyond that dream because it was the dream that obsessed you until death. And that will only lead you to the descent of darkness. Simply, no matter what happens, I will be the eminence among the shadows. An eminence requires power, an eminence requires wisdom. Does an eminence require maturity? An eminence requires that the darkness be within it as approachable as possible, that the darkness be so much that even the concept of darkness is not enough to consider it darkness. An eminence in the shadows does not need friends, does not need family, does not even need useless NPCs to get him into what he originally plots. An eminence in the shadows will find what he wants as he spends his life and until his life even ends. That is my path. The image of Minoru Kagenou began to slowly crack as fragments of memories began to appear without absolute order in that space of darkness. Cid Kagenou only continued standing, pressing both fists. His smile was fading as each fragment was passing. Why aren't you normal? No matter what happens, I'll always be your brother. Son, I found out you now have what you always dreamed of. Let me help you. I've always hated you. Kagenou-kun, good morning. 37, 38, 39, 40. More, I need more power. I must admit that my arms and body hurt from all the excessive training I do, but if this is going to make me the eminence in the shadows, if this is going to bring about any change, the pain is simply unnecessary. Mother, I achieved a goal as you wished. Get out of here! You are not normal. I have finally obtained the power I need and I can have more. I will be the eminence among the shadows that I always dreamed of, but why? Cid had fallen to his knees while his head was already on the ground. In front of him was that fragment that looked so much like him. I see, so this is the true identity of Cid Kagenou. I can't take it anymore, no more. Those words came out of Cid, who was breaking those memories with each tear he shed. The memories were fragmenting, while he was venting his true self. His other counterpart came to light. Why can't you? I don't want to hurt important people anymore. I don't want to be the eminence in the shadows anymore. I don't want to become that. I can't take it anymore. You are the representation of the doubts that harbored in my heart. Only if somehow my soul tried to stop me would I represent it in another completely different being, or simply he is, the true Cid Kagenou, the soul that could not reach this world because the soul of Minoru took possession of his body. As that soul was also at its destiny, I decided to merge them into one. Cid Kagenou always had feelings. But the soul of a reincarnated, the soul of that child, was stronger. And somehow since his birth he was blocked. He has the memories of Cid Kagenou, he has the strength of Cid Kagenou. But he is not the same entity. The mixing of souls only resulted in someone whose sense is completely distorted from this world, an anomaly in this world which cannot have any representation. Is that the representation of what you are? Cid Kagenou. You've always longed for this goal, you've always longed for power, you've always longed to achieve your goal no matter what. Power matters everything and you know it. It's not like that. All I long for is to be able to be with a functioning family, to be around and live out my days in peace while having the power to change my destiny and do whatever I please, something I didn't have before. You can obtain it after reaching the maximum pinnacle in the shadows. You can achieve everything you set your mind to. I've already tried my days in peace. I've already tried what Minoru Kagenou once wished for. But it doesn't work. The only thing that works is the last wish I ever yearned for in life. Power. You don't. You are only a fragment. Your opinion has no relevance or meaning whatsoever. Therefore, the soul of the true Cid Kagenou does not belong to me or any other plane. But I will keep your name. After all, I was born with this name. Interesting. So that is what you want. Kagenou Minoru. No. I should say Cid Kagenou. Please, if one day someone can save me from this fate. The fragments of that mysterious soul were slowly fading away, the soul of the original body, the Cid Kagenou that was sealed for so long in Cid's body and which was released when a small opening in Cid's soul was released, but now that soul was disappearing by the simple force of Minoru Kagenou's will the original Cid Kagenou never existed in this world from here on out. And the traces of humanity that Cid Kagenou retained in his being partly because of that fragmented soul are leaving to resume its original idea. The soul whose purpose makes no sense is disappearing. He achieved the unexpected, he faced his unbreakable past. Chapter 25.5. The past I want to forget. a girl with crimson eyes and long white hair with black streaks in her hair. Her appearance indicated that she was approximately 12 years old. She was lying in the middle of absolutely nowhere until her own subconscious spoke for itself. Wake up. What happened? My head. I started to get up from the floor with a small headache. When I looked around, my brother was nowhere to be found. Around me there was nothing but a gray space. Where am I? The last thing I remember was my brother, and I'm moving forward to explore this place, but... You've finally woken up. A voice resonated in the place. The little girl turned her gaze towards where the voice sounded. When looking in his direction, she could notice a familiar figure. It was none other than her brother Cid Kagenou. But he wore his attire like an eminence in the shadows. Brother? In the time you met that person, Cid Kagenou, you managed to form a bond so strong that it even surpassed the bond you formed with your own mother. You are not him. Who are you? I am a fragment of your restricted memories that you have hidden in your heart for all these years. Memory fragment? This site tests visitors' worst fears and traumas. If they are able to overcome their past, only then will they be worthy of presenting themselves before him. Otherwise, a person who does not know themselves or cannot overcome something so simple cannot be considered worthy. Wait, then are we at the center of this place? Have we arrived at the center of the voice of destiny? That's right, and this is the test the center offers once you reach this place. If you overcome the desire that binds this place, you will be freed. The conditions are to face and overcome your absolute past. Facing your past. You can also refuse the test and decide not to agree to it. I just have one question. Is my brother also in this place? That's right, he is facing the test. But he was special. Special? For some reason unknown to him, he was not allowed to reject the test but to face it directly. Was he forbidden from refusing the test? But why is that? I know he was going to take it, but does that mean he couldn't avoid it if he didn't want to? That's how it is. Can you read my mind? I am a fragment of you in the form of the person you love most in this world right now. I can read the hearts of everyone who enters this place. Because after all, I belong to you. I understand. What is your answer? My brother is facing his past in this test, therefore, I can't afford to stay behind. Since the moment I decided to return and go with him, it would mean that I would no longer be a burden to him. I can't continue letting him do everything. If this can help me be the person I need to be. A test is nothing compared to everything I've already been through. Your answer is yes in that case. The world began to shake abruptly. Hannah was alarmed, but as soon as she opened her eyes again after a human blink, they were now somewhere else, more specifically in the orphanage where she had previously resided. Next to her, the figure of her brother, which was a simple fragment, remained. A person with a familiar appearance who had long blonde hair along with a small flower apron she was wearing and a height of 1 hour 65 minutes with heels of the lowest price, was taking care of some children. Seeing that figure for the first time in so long in her life, the girl couldn't help but be surprised while more memories invaded her mind. Mother? So how's the homework going around here? Mother! Multiple children who said that nickname approached the one who was their closest maternal figure with a smile, while some carried toys with them. The room was a mess by itself. Mother, are you back from your homework? Mother plays with us. Mother, Eric did something very bad. It isn't true. Okay, I understand, but before you tell me anything else, I need you to clean the game room, okay? Mother, the group of boys was the one who made the most mess. That's how it is. It isn't. That woman just gave a smile as she approached both of them with a warm gesture that clearly represented the love she had for both parties. I've taught you to share and have fun together, haven't I? Why, yes. If everyone does it quickly, it will be faster than just one person. Having a team is more fun. But guys may make mistakes, but no one is perfect. Mistakes can be covered up if they're willing to lend a hand. Girls can cover up mistakes guys make, while guys lend a hand when they need it. If there's love, anything is possible. Now come on, excuse yourselves both, and instead of fighting, let's all have fun. What do you think? All the boys started apologizing to the girls while you only accepted their apologies. Seeing that scene, she only gave a smile. What do you think? I have something very special prepared for you tonight. What is it that she is a mother? It's a secret. Why? I want to know what it is. I'm so sorry, guys. Suddenly an older person approached the woman and grabbed her by her shoulder. Sarah-san. What's wrong, Grandma? We have to go back. Someone is talking to us about them again. Oh, I understand. Mother? I'll be right back, okay? While I'm back, clean up the playground. Yeah. Sarah and the grandmother began to walk until they reached the indicated place where the entrance of the orphanage was. Next to the table where they attended, there was a person holding a girl with multiple wounds on her body. That girl looked pale and was unconscious and full of water from the rain. Her hair was long and had signs of violence. Wait, you're saying we should keep her? But you even looked into her file? If we don't do it, where will she live? Do you want me to leave her? She's a girl. Send her to another orphanage or daycare center. We can't keep her. If they're looking for her, we'll be in danger if they find out we have her. What's going on? Sarah-san, you're finally here. As Sarah approached the mysterious girl, she worriedly picked her up and, noticing the wounds, tried to dry her a little with her clothes. Who is this girl? The grandmother exclaimed with doubt as she approached both of them. Apparently, Dan-san says he found her lying in an alley. When he brought her here, we investigated where she might have lived, but we found that this girl doesn't have a name. However, she's being targeted by the devil cult. I know this because there are multiple posters searching for her whereabouts. There's also a document that says she's been to more orphanages, and all the ones where she's been end in massacres. That's why we should send her somewhere else. It's very dangerous here. If we do it, where else will she stay? The other orphanages will do the same. No one will accept her. Then let's hand her over. How could you even think of that? If we do that, they'll probably do horrible things to her. If the cult is after her, So what do we do? Think carefully about where she is or where we are. We can't risk having her here if she's being sought. We have to think about the children, about those who live here, about us. She's not our daughter. We have no responsibility or obligation to accept her here. I'll take care of her, Sarah said as she carried the girl in her arms and was taking care of her with herself. Wait, what are you going to do? Did you even hear part of the conversation? Yes, I heard it. Then why you? We can't leave her to her fate. If we do, we don't know what might happen to her, and I refuse to abandon a child whose fault it is that murderers are after her. Sarah-san, I understand what you're saying, but we can't risk keeping her here. You know what will happen if we're discovered, right? If the cult discovers us, right? Do you have any idea? I have an idea, Izumi-kun, but I simply can't leave her behind. I refuse. Since I started taking care of the children here, it's a promise I made to myself. It's something my mom taught me since I can remember. She took me in, even though I was a stranger, and she taught me all the values that I know thanks to her. Therefore, I will do it. Gosh, you're hopeless. Sarah-san has a big heart after all. But we'll have to hide it, okay? If something happens, we'll have to hand her over no matter what. All right. As she watched the scene, the little girl inevitably began to shed some tears. Her mother's attitude toward her, despite not wanting her and despite everything she did, accepted her just as she was from the beginning to the end of her life. You've finally woken up. How are you feeling? I understand. You don't feel like talking, right? Don't worry, this must be very hard for you. You still need to rest. If you have any needs, don't get up and try talking to someone by pressing this button. Understand? I have to go back. I have some business. The little girl nodded as the assistant left her alone. She looked around until a sudden mental pain came without any explanation. Images of her covered in blood while standing around multiple bodies filled her head without cease, and random taboo words she took from her head. Mother. Doctor, how is she? I've regained consciousness, but I'm still not talking. I probably need time to do that. I need to rest. I can't get up much yet. My injuries were very complicated to treat. It's almost a miracle I'm still alive. But what did you detect? What does she have? We noticed several cuts around his body, on his legs, arms, and abdomen, as well as some on his face. A fracture of his right wrist and a bump on his head, I think from a blow. We did not detect any bruises or serious side effects. Fortunately, due to exposure to the outside, he is very sensitive to getting sick, so please keep him from being exposed while he recovers and eats properly at high temperatures. That is why he must be in bed. Yes, thank you, doctor. Commitment. The doctor left the place, leaving Sarah and the others alone. What kind of accident did you have? I don't know, it almost seems like someone tried to hurt her. Let's forget about that. We need to think about how we're going to protect her from those guys. Yes, you're right. Sarah-san, what do you think? When her classmates turned to look at her, she hadn't answered what they asked again, surprised. Sarah-san? Sorry, I'll go see her for a few moments. Will you excuse me? Yeah, sure, I guess. Hannah looked at her bandaged wrist as she tried to remember the last thing that had happened, but her mind was blank. The wounds she had caused her pain. But the pain she had physically did not compare to the fact of losing her family again. She simply hugged herself, resigned to being able to have a normal life. Why was this happening to her? Why was she suffering? Why did she have this strange power and kill them all? Without any explanation, she only believed that it was all the product of a bad dream for which she was responsible for everything. Mom, Dad. The door to the little girl's room rattled a little as the knob was turned. The door opened completely. A woman entered Hannah's room. She only tilted her gaze towards the window while she continued holding on to her legs. In turn, her right arm had been administered serum which ran through her veins due to the lack of hydration in her body. It had been 2 days since the little girl had arrived at this strange orphanage from which she had not left that room at the request of the doctor himself. Can I come in? The woman asked gently, to which the girl only nodded, still leaning sideways. Some footsteps from that woman's ends began to sound. She sat next to the little girl's bed, who was looking in the opposite direction to where she was sitting. How do you feel? The little girl did not answer the question that the woman had asked her. You know, when I go outside I really like to look at the sky, whether it's night or day, regardless of the weather, because it reminds me how beautiful the sky is every morning and that every day is a new beginning, no matter what tomorrow is. I like to think that the day represents the beginning in a mysterious new day, the sunset the course of that day and how I learned in that course, and the night is the conclusion. When I look at the sun I like to think about hope, and when I look at the stars I like to count them and their shooting star names. If the day were a new beginning, why can I never have a good beginning? That girl spoke to the surprise of that woman, answering the phrase she had given her. Well, a beginning isn't just the course of the day, but what you set out to learn, or even learn involuntarily without realizing it, is what your heart believes. Whenever I try everything gets ruined. The little girl just continued hugging her legs without being able to correctly look at who was looking at her. That woman only gave a small smile. I understand it must have been really hard, right? The fact that you think there's no beginning means that a beginning didn't start the way you expected. I just want to have a normal life. You'll have it, no matter what. I'll help you have it. Oh, really? Helping people, helping those in need, always reaching out to others without expecting anything in return, is something I learned from the person I loved most in this world. That person is no longer by my side, but that person taught me everything I know now, and that's why I will always help others no matter what. I no longer believe in those words. I no longer believe in the meaning of a beginning. So let's start over now, from a new opportunity. Help yourself and give yourself the chance of a new life from now on. I'm sure that what you want is just to be able to be safe and live longer in this world, not to be isolated, not to be locked up without accepting help from someone. The eyes of that girl began to light up a little, and she felt a light hug with warmth that she had never experienced before in her life, the opportunity to perhaps start from scratch what she once considered the life she always wanted to have. But I always ruined it. You will not be alone anymore from now on as long as I am here with you forever. I will always protect you." Upon hearing those last words, the little girl began to release a heartbreaking cry while she hugged the kind woman who had given her a hug and the opportunity to change again. Yeah. Mom, why did you leave, Mom? I never intended to disobey your orders, Mom. I want you back. I want to see you again. That woman just continued caressing the girl's hair while she caressed her long hair. She continued crying. Seeing that scene again, she couldn't help but feel sad but at the same time happy because her mother had always accepted her as she was from the beginning. This was a part of your past that you wanted to forget. True, a past I never wanted to remember. But this is what happened, and no matter what I do, I can't deny it, so I won't let this continue to affect me. I can only thank Mother for always being by my side until the end. We still have more of this inevitable past that you must look at. I'm ready. As the image distorted, the world began to change again. This time it showed Hannah starting to live with the children of the orphanage and how she slowly began to open up at her own pace with them and make new friends. The person she considered her mother was always attentive to her. It could almost be considered a little overprotective, but the girl was not bothered at all. She had what she always wanted, the life she always wanted to have. Although it made her laugh that her mother always worried so much about her, that was something that undoubtedly made her happy but also a little exaggerated. For some strange reason, every night or morning and every Saturday the little girl was forbidden to leave the playground for no reason or explanation. Her mother tried to tell her that the cause was because they cleaned the entire orphanage in general with a hygiene inspection and therefore she could not get close, which was obviously a lie. The only lie that woman had ever told in her life, and it hurt her to do so, the lie to protect who she considered one of her daughters and take care of her from those strangers who murdered without piety everywhere, the cult of devils which always came on weekends to collect the souvenirs they requested in exchange for the orphanage. Seeing those memories pass through her eyes, Hannah only felt nostalgia for remembering the old moments without avoiding feeling sad because they were moments that were never going to return. But she also understood that the past is not something that someone should focus on but on the present. It is something she had learned from Cid, and the image next to her reaffirmed it with interest. After seeing the reason why her mother told her that every weekend, the little girl finally understood the reason. That strange organization that always persecuted her since she was a child was behind her, and it was not just any organization to have such power. Noticing her mother's pain for the lies she told, she only gave a small smile. "Mother, you don't have to apologize. After all, you always did it to protect me, and everyone else. Compared to you, my lies are completely meaningless." The more they delved into her past, Hannah remembered that moment where her mother had been happy, the moment in which she introduced her husband, who was nothing more and less than Dan, who had fallen in love with Sarah. Immediately, all the children had previously taken a great liking to Dan because he always brought them candy when he could. Sometimes he was even scolded by Sarah because so much candy would hurt them. He also acted very kind and was almost like a father to everyone. As soon as the news was confirmed, everyone began to treat him like a father. Hannah did so without hesitation. Seeing the person she loved the most at that moment, her mother, having a partner and being happy, made her very happy. Dan was always kind to Hannah. He even used to read stories to her next to Sarah when she couldn't sleep because of the memories that tormented her. In one of the many memories, Dan entered a room answering the apparent call of someone who was speaking to him. "Yes, here she is. What do we do now?" "We'll send reinforcements to support you. Kill everyone in the orphanage for harboring her and bring the girl to me. Pito-sama will surely be happy once he finds out he's recovered his most valuable possession." Understood. The memory fragmented and showed the exact moment in which Hannah's father now showed his true self on that night that the little girl did not want to remember. Renowned Dan Ken was a spy for the Diabolos cult, which had to confirm Hannah's order. At first the cult decided to let pass the fact that the orphanage hid the little girl, but after a while now they asked for her back. The cult was clearly not stupid, and they knew from the beginning the useless plan that the orphanage had. However, they decided to leave her there simply out of courtesy that she would endure being with them for so long. "Ha! Wait, Hannah, you run too fast!" A little girl tried to reach Hannah, but she ran to avoid it while smiling. It seems that there is nothing strange at the moment. Nothing strange? According to our reports, this little one was entrusted here by one person, but he omitted Hannah's reports. Aren't we supposed to be unable to accept her without the reports? I know. But I couldn't leave her behind. She had nowhere to go, and she's just a kid. You're very soft. You can't make your own decisions, even if they're children. We have to make sure they don't have any signs of possession or links to the devil cult. Even if they're children. If any of the above is with them, it's painful, but we have to let them go. I'll let you get away with what you did today, but don't take your eyes off her, and everything that happens because of that girl will be your responsibility. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. The older man started to walk away, leaving his companion alone, who sighed as she walked. Hannah, come here. The little girl approached Dan after hearing his call. Have you noticed anything strange lately? Any feeling of like hurting someone? And no. You know I don't like lies, right, Hannah? If something happens, tell me honestly so I can support you and help you. Understand? If you lie, where will he get sad? Why, yes, I understand. Now go have fun. The little girl nodded and returned to her friends to play again as usual. I see the plan isn't working. I'll have to resort to phase 2. The last thing I wanted to do was this. Oh, Mr. Dan, I need to ask you a favor. Sure. What's up? I need to deliver these papers, but I can't carry them all. I'll take care of it. What are you doing with that, Hannah-chan? I make a cube. A cube? I didn't know you liked puzzles. They bore me to bits. I've never been able to put one together. I understand. If you want, I can recommend a better game. We can all play it together. No, I mean that's fine. Huh? Why not? I haven't put the cube together yet. I'd like to put it together someday. So let's make a promise. When you put together that cube, I'll recommend the game to you and we'll all play it together. Is that okay? Come on, promises are always kept, aren't they? Gee, good. Yes. Then I'll wait for the day. The little girl gave a slight smile at her friend's response. She didn't plan on leaving the cube, but she would definitely keep her promise, without hesitation. After all, it was something her mother had taught her. Always keep promises, try to have fun, and see the positive side of the world. The sound of a door began to ring and a woman of approximately 27 years old was seen entering the room. Are you still awake? It's time for everyone to sleep. But it's still early. It doesn't matter if it is. Tomorrow everyone goes back to school, so I can't let them stay up so late. Now everyone go to bed. Everyone would nod reluctantly and go to bed except for Hannah. Come on, Hannah, you have to go to sleep too. I can't sleep. Can't sleep? Why? Mother, no. These guys always somehow extend my shift. Deep sigh. I'll stay until you're able to solidify your sleep, okay? Now go to bed. Why, yes. Hannah went to her respective bed while being cuddled by the person next to her, and in turn being stroked on the head. After spending some time next to the little girl, he finally fell asleep 3 minutes after she was next to him. Has she fallen asleep? It's weird. Normally, when kids can't sleep, I tell them a story for about 7 minutes to get them to sleep. I guess she was just afraid of being alone. The little girl held the hand of her mother's partner and slept deeply. She only smiled a little due to the little girl's action, confirming her theory. I don't know why you're acting like this, but I'll stay a little while until you can sleep soundly. I'm tired, but I have to get on with my shift. I still have 3 hours left. I know, but they were the only shifts available. We can't go back. I guess. Footsteps sound. Wow, this is heavy. Are you Sarah? Dan? I thought you were off duty. Oh, it's you. Can you help me? Between the three of them, they started to get rid of the excessive papers that were in the corresponding mailbox. Ugh. Why were there so many documents? No idea. It was my shift. But I offered to drive you, so I was a little late. Are you on your shift? Yeah, we got in 2 hours ago, but my eyes are already hurting. I think I should change shifts now that I think about it. It was your idea that we were here. Why do they pay more? But I don't think I need more money if my body can't handle the shift. The truth is, age is already taking its toll on me. But you're only 45 years old, or a san. Why won't they let me take their turns? Take our turns? Did you ask permission? Yes. I took overtime because I need to save up for something important then. I took the night shift. The boss sent me to tell you that you can leave. That's strange. He didn't tell us anything 2 hours ago. You're sure? You can go to the office to confirm it if that's what you're interested in. In case the plan went wrong, I had already planned for the boss to be drugged to give confirmation thanks to my partner. It's not necessary. If you say it, it's because it's true. In that case, we'll let you have our turn. Yeah. The two of them began to leave, not without first saying goodbye to their partner, who also responded with a smile. Everyone is asleep right now, okay, it's time to start working on this. Dan put on some gloves as he left his post, walking all over the place, investigating the rooms of the different orphans. Room 112. Sound of door opening. I'm so sorry, Hannah, it's not personal, but I'm just following orders. If I don't hand you over, I'll die. I don't want the others to die either. Maybe if I hand over breastplates Sama, it will give the others mercy and they can be saved, but I need you to disappear from here. I moved forward to each bed. I tried to walk as quietly as possible to wake up the orphans who were here. I reached the bottom and finally found my target. It was a girl with white hair and red eyes, as the description told me. I approached the little girl and picked her up. As soon as I did, I put a handkerchief on her, but something went wrong. The girl woke up as soon as I did and started making an exaggerated noise. Hannah, go to sleep, Hannah. CHT. I pressed the sedative cloth hard and knocked her off her feet. I have it. The mission is done now. This identity of orphanage father is no longer necessary. I may be hated in this place after what I'm going to do if they manage to find out, but I don't care. The only thing I wanted was to protect this place. That's why I became a spy in secret. I don't want this place to disappear because they can't follow 100% the will of the Diabolos cult. If I must corrupt myself to maintain this place, I will do it, because this place is very important to me. Seeing that scene, the little girl shuddered, unable to move. The person who had been so important to her, the person she always trusted and was a father to her, had kidnapped her that day and was planning to hand her over to the organization that was chasing her. Father? Why? He was simply another pawn of that organization. He loved the organization until you arrived at the orphanage. Because you posed a danger to the orphanage and he had a fondness for the orphanage, he had to choose between the orphanage or you. He was a spy for the organization and he already knew that they were aware. He still had time to perhaps save the orphanage, but you were no longer saved. Whether he got involved or not made no difference. It can't be. This isn't. Contemplate this. Inevitable. Past. I started walking with Hannah in my arms. While I walked, I prepared my weapon. If someone was close, I would use it even if I didn't want to. Really, using this place for a mission of this level was something that not even I liked at all. But if I disobey the cult of Diabolos, they will kill me. I have no choice. I'm sorry, Hannah, but it's you or us. Dan? What are you doing? Hannah fainted. I tried to get her to the couch and set the alarm. Did he faint? My partner approached the little girl, who foolishly fell into the trap. Without flinching, I used my weapon on him to knock him out. But he saw through my intentions and stopped my weapon. What are you doing, Dan? It would have been better if you continued on your break shift, Yoichi. What are you planning? This doesn't concern you, Yoichi. Let me go. If you do, I'll spare your life. I don't want to kill you. What did you do with Hannah? For your own good, it's better not to know. CHT. Yoichi took out a knife, which was the only thing he had on hand to defend himself. So you're going to do it? I don't have time to waste. I have to kill him no matter what, otherwise I'll alert the others. I approached my former partner with my weapon, but he stopped the cut. He's someone with training, after all. I can't defeat him without using my magic power, but if I do, I'll alarm the whole place, and I'll have to go on a killing spree. I won't let you take the damned girl. You will do it. An exchange of swords arose between Dan and Yoichi that was even for a few seconds. Yoichi ran towards what was the alarm button. Upon noticing this, Dan threw his sword directly at Yoichi, who caught it on his sword and fell to the ground. Ah! You were a good companion, it's a shame what I'll do. Dreamer. Yoichi materialized a small magical power in his hand and threw it at the alarm, which activated. Now you're trapped. A sound was heard. It was the slash that severed the aforementioned man's head, and he fell violently to the ground. Damn, this is what happens when you trust me. 5 minutes after the alarm, the rooms were opened and some sleepy children came out. Some caregivers also came out. When they came out, they saw something that completely froze their blood. Where? The one who had been taking care of them for so many years, the one who always gave them love as if he were a real father. He wore different clothes, but that was not the only thing. A sword was on his arm, and what was the head of the kind guard? Huh? But what happened? Sarah. Dan, what have you done? Dan, answer. What have you done? It would have been better if they had fallen asleep. I'd rather not do this. Hannah? Hannah! Dan, please don't do it. Due to the scandal, little Hannah woke up sleepy from Dan's shoulders, who looked at her with surprise. Dad? As soon as the girl mentioned those words, she could see how her father, who was carrying her, used his speed and began to kill everyone who was in the orphanage with his sword. Blood and screams of agony began to be heard throughout the orphanage without Caesar. Kia! Please no! No! Piety! Blood splashed on the little girl, who, upon seeing what was happening, grabbed her face and confirmed that it was covered in the red substance. There was no doubt this was real blood, and her father was making it so. Stop. Is she awake? The sedative I gave her should have put her to sleep for the rest of the day. How is she still able to move? No more, please stop. This is your fault, it's all your fault. If only you hadn't been in this orphanage, none of this would have happened, damn it. The screams didn't stop. They all continued, and each scream only stayed in the little girl's head, who was watching as each of her classmates were killed by their own father, and as each one's blood was falling. Memories invaded her mind of each person with whom she had spent her time in the newly orphaned home where she had entered the few happy moments that were for at least a few moments. The only orphanage that didn't treat her differently was perishing in front of her eyes. One girl remained, the one Hannah considered her best friend, began to crawl in fear. The only one missing is you. And no, please no, father. Dan only approached the one he treated as his daughter once did while she tried to back away. Dan felt a pain in his chest as he did what he was going to do, but there was no turning back. Everyone was now his enemy. He could no longer live in this orphanage and be looked at the same way. Now he would have to start the orphanage from zero. With the help of the cult, he could do it without a doubt. No. Help. I'm sorry, you have nothing to do with this. Why are you doing this? We trusted you. You were our savior, our father. Why did you? The little girl, before finishing, was finished off with a precise cut by the sword of who was her former father, dying instantly after this action. Dan only looked away in disgust. Finish the work. Now I guess I should give the report. No more, no more. I forgot Hannah was awake. That was excessive even for me. Well, it doesn't matter anymore. She'll probably go to a much worse place anyway. What I'm going to do will be minuscule compared. No more, no more, no more, no more. What's going on? No more. The whole place began to shake slightly under the pressure of those words. No more, 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 no. But what? Before he could continue, Dan died in 1,000 pieces before a euphoric Hannah, who had no total control over her actions. She just repeated those words in her head thousands of times without Caesar. Hannah? Her surprised best friend got up with difficulty, and tried to approach her best friend. However, she barely looked at her and noticed something strange. The color of her hair, her eyes, were different. She could barely look at her. Her companion had completely disappeared from this world. After a long time, Hannah was unconscious on the floor asleep until she finally woke up. When she did, she saw how the whole place was a massacre. Lifeless bodies were everywhere in the orphanage, and the whole place was destroyed. She began to walk slowly through what was her old home. As she walked, memories flooded her mind of the things she had done. How this orphanage was the only one that hadn't treated her like garbage. How they always tried to teach her something new, and how the love she'd never experienced began to emerge. Tears fell from her face until she finally realized what it was. The body of the one she considered her father and mother lying on the ground. Hannah squeezed both of their bodies with her small fists and began to scream heartbreakingly. She grabbed her head, desperately trying to do the only thing she could at that moment, feel the absolute guilt of the entire weight falling on herself. So this is the report. I can now confirm that she is not an ordinary child, so sending her to an orphanage is not a good idea. Is that why you're asking me to take care of it? You will take care of this child and make reports of her behavior/attitude by filling out the forms and making reports yourself if you notice anything unusual. She is dangerous, so she should not be out of her room. If anything happens to her, you will be responsible. Child Numapitos. Understood. Let's go. All the cult spies retreated while the person in charge of the little girl approached her room and looked through the window at what was the little girl sleeping and hugging a strange cube. So special, huh? If that's the case, perhaps she's the key to finally allowing the Diabolos cult to gain the greatest power in the world, perhaps for me to gain the greatest power in the world. Hannah, it's time to eat. The door began to be knocked on a little violently to wake up the girl who was only hugging her bucket. I don't want to eat. Hannah, what did we say about not obeying my orders? You're going to eat, or else I'll have to come and make you eat. All right. Good girl. The door was opened and that guy came in with a plate of food and water in his hand. It was someone wearing a doctor's cap. Finish quickly, I need to run some tests on you. When chewing, the girl felt a deep pain in her mouth and spat out some blood. Hurt. Don't complain and eat quickly, I don't have all day. All right. I can't find anything strange about her. Since when did the tests begin? It's been 12 days since you were transferred here, as you requested, but nothing we've done has worked. There has to be a way, keep investigating. The tests are having side effects on your body, sir. Then heal her with your magic as many times as necessary, and that's it. Stop bothering me every day with these reports and instead tell me something important. Understood. My arms hurt, I can barely feel my legs and it hurts to chew. Hannah hugged herself between her legs, looking at the ground with sadness, beginning to remember all those moments she lived before being trapped again in that place she wanted to forget. Okay, I deserve it. The door was opened as that doctor guy came back in, this time with more emotion in him. Hannah, it's time to have fun. Are you ready? I hope you are because I am. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the boss wouldn't let me see you because they did the tests on you. But don't worry, I'll ease that pain. We'll have the best night. The sound of the door creaked and opened again. From the door that doctor began to come out again while he had a bandage on his right arm. That bandage covered what was part of his hand and forearm, which were missing as if it were some accident in which that hand was no longer there. Hannah, it's time for your evaluation. Due to your attitude towards me yesterday, I think it wasn't very clear what I wanted to express to you when I clearly told you. I will protect you, but you just have to keep quiet and accept what I have to do in order to do it. I see that you need another way to learn it. That doctor began to act in a strange way in front of Hannah, who did not understand what he was referring to. That wound she had also had her confused. You don't know what happened. Don't worry, I'll tell you clearly what happened, but don't worry, I'm not mad at you for that. The doctor began to walk. Hannah, upon noticing those steps, began to get scared for no strange reason. She felt that something was not right. She tried to escape, but she couldn't because of the chains that held her and prohibited her from passing. When the doctor was near her, he grabbed her hair and pulled her to force her to fall on the ground. Hurts! Of course it hurts, that's what you did to me yesterday. It hurt a lot, it hurts a lot, doesn't it? The doctor continued pulling Hannah's hair while she was only moaning in pain. She tried every possible way to free herself, but it was useless. Not only the chains held her back, her weak body was unable to generate enough strength to free herself from the grip of any adult. You took my arm, Hannah. Upon hearing those words, the little girl was only surprised to hear, had she lost control again? Had she caused someone else to hurt her? Whether she was a bad or good person, she hated hurting others, she didn't want to remember anymore. But don't worry, now I need to make up for that. I'll take everything from you from now on. The doctor stopped holding Hannah's hair, letting her fall to the ground. The little girl on the ground helpless tried with the little strength she had to grab the bucket that was within her reach. That bucket was the last gift from the most important person to her. When she was next to that bucket, she felt that her mother was with her. A sound of falling clothes resounded. That doctor was taking off his clothes while only observing the little girl. He gave an annoying smile and kicked the bucket. It's time for you to experience the truth. Mother. That night, Hannah lost the purity and brightness in her eyes. The next day. After that night in which Hannah lost the light, she woke up. When she woke up, she felt a very strong pain throughout her body. A strange pain ran over her. Physically, the pain was not much, but mentally, the pain did not let her move. When she tried to remember the last thing that happened, she covered her mouth while the brightness in her eyes began to fade more and more. That night, Hannah experienced the worst feeling she had ever felt in her entire life. A feeling that did not compare to the physical damage she had experienced before. The pain of having suffered in front of someone unknown, and that no one could save her. That little hope that beat in her vanished. His thoughts were interrupted by that door ringing again. It was the doctor who, unlike the previous day, now had a big smile. Hi, Hannah-chan! I brought your breakfast. This time I'm in a good mood, so I bought you something instead of eating what they always give me. But don't tell anyone. I just want to die. Remembering that night, Hannah only clenched her fists, the night she was abused by that doctor. The night she had lost hope. It was something horrible, and it was something very painful. She tried to contain the despair she had with her, but she couldn't. Visibly, that fragment knew it perfectly. Her fists began to bleed from helplessness. Every day, every night, that doctor did the same thing, in a disgusting and shameless way. He continued with that suffering. Hannah woke up day after day with pain and suffering. When the count reached 100, she stopped expressing the emotions she had within her. Wake up, wake up! You can't let him keep treating you like that, you can't do it! Hannah tried in vain to contact that fragment which was only on the ground. She knew it was useless, but the desperation was such that she no longer cared. She just wanted to see something that was not more suffering from the past. The fragment began to fall apart, and Hannah could no longer hold that fragment. Now another fragment was showing itself. Pito-sama, I have the reports on Hannah that you asked for. Very well, thanks for the reports. If you'll excuse me, I'll proceed to leave. The doctor started to leave, but his steps stopped when Pitos called him again. Wait. Is something wrong, Pito-sama? You see, I'm very intrigued. Intrigued? That's right, I'm very intrigued why it's been more than 112 days since, as you know, Project X, in which the patient is that girl we're guarding, began. Yes, that's right, but why? But 79 days ago I noticed something strange. Her body showed different signs since they brought her to me. Different signs? There were more wounds, all areas showed physical abuse. Maybe she inflicted those wounds on herself, breastplate-sama. I think that since day 50, she's been a little out of control trying to escape from this place. Indeed, but the wounds she caused were only slight scratches on her arms or legs. The wounds she has during this time have been all over her body. And according to surveillance, they have not detected any suspicious movement from the girl that would have made her do all that, not to mention that her stomach was very swollen due to not eating properly. Tell me, do you have anything to do with this? I assure you that I am not at all times. You guard her, you feed her, You give her the injections we do as tests, you even have control over her for a prolonged period for those actions. The only one who, according to my reports, could have been with her apart from the security personnel is you, and something very interesting that I discovered was this. Pitos showed a document that compiled data on Hannah and how to use her power source specifically. Sounds like maybe you were planning treason? The doctor, upon seeing those files, had frozen in terror. His plan, everything he had built, had been discovered by his superior teacher. You know, it would have been better if you had been honest with me from the beginning. Maybe I could have spared your life. Wait. Don't kill me. I can share it. I can give you power. I have the analysis almost finished. That girl is valuable. She is so valuable that if we use her correctly, we will obtain a power that even the cult will fear. We can make a new organization. We can. It sounds tempting, but sadly I have no intention of betraying the solo cult. Let's just say I plan to do something for them in exchange for their loyalty. Hey! The doctor's head quickly fell to the ground. The doctor's blood had splashed onto Pitos, who only adjusted his glasses and bent down to pick up some documents that had fallen due to the wind generated by that surprise movement. As fast as ever. Pitos-sama, I took charge as you requested. Good job. Now I want all this guy's data with me immediately. If anything new, let me know. Understood. Hannah, seeing that death, could not contain a little of the relief she felt that the person who had been torturing her for so long had perished. But when she noticed that the other strange scientist had plans with those documents, she deduced that she could not simply settle for this. She only fell to her knees after the fragments began to disappear due to the mental pressure. After finishing all the past that the little girl had, the fragments had ended. She only stood without saying a word, and everything that happened missing from those lost memories. The fragment of Shadow's soul only stared at her, waiting for an answer. Approximately 1 hour passed so that she could process everything and give a concrete answer. She only wanted to be apart from processing the information, to have space to release what she had stored. It was something that Shadow's fragment perfectly understood. Now I understand why they died that day. It wasn't me. It was my father. That's right, but you killed your best friend. It's a sin I'll never be able to forgive, along with the one from the early days when I was a child and I had finished them all. But I was just a child and I was being controlled. It doesn't erase my actions, but I don't have to blame myself for everything that happened. I'm surprised you weren't devastated by such events. You were even abused and killed those you cared about most, whether you controlled it or not. You did it anyway. What would be the point of regretting it now? I'd just be wasting my time and continuing the cycle I've been in for so long because I don't want to learn how to make a change. If I've learned anything in this life, it's that no one is pure, and no matter how many evil things I've done, they won't be erased. But I can avoid doing more if I focus on the present and leave the past behind. You know, I even thought that looking at my past would affect me more, but I have no regrets. Aren't you afraid of losing control again? Of those powers? Of killing your brother? It would be foolish to say I don't have. So. But I know he's there and supports me at all times. When I did it more than once, he stopped me. Even when I was so bad, he did it. And if he could do it, I'm sure that at some point I'll achieve not needing to depend on him like that anymore. Because after all, he may be greedy, arrogant, and sometimes annoying. But he never lies in his word or his promises, so I choose to believe in my future. I choose to believe in my brother. At those words, the whole place suddenly began to shake non-stop. Test passed, well done. Shadow's figure began to fade as the whole world began to crumble into pieces. Wait. When Hannah tried to reach that figure, she suddenly felt a sudden blow. She began to open her eyes slowly. When she did so, she noticed a familiar figure next to her who was just sitting. Ugh. You finally woke up. Is the test over? Apparently so. How did it go? The little girl exclaimed, looking at Cid. Well, I made it through it all. I'm glad to hear it. Do you think this will stop you from having those weird attacks again? It shouldn't happen again now, because I finally got rid of what was bothering me, exclaimed Cid, who looked at Hannah with a lost smile. At such a smile, the little girl shuddered a little but decided to change the subject. Now what do we do? An endless number of butterflies began to emerge from where they both were while that passageway was now illuminated. In the surroundings, the butterflies illuminated in yellow what was the entrance to a new path. Move forward. A voice echoed in the place with no apparent location. Without hesitation, Cid began to advance while Hannah followed him. Chapter 26/27/28. No matter how strong you are, the darkness is greater than you can imagine. Ha ha ha. Ha! Then I'll just go deeper. I mean it, brat. I'll show you. The enormous darkness that this world holds, my darkness. How long ago did that happen? The moment Nay-san was kidnapped when I was 13, the last mission I carried out together with Alpha and the girls before leaving on a trip to Midgar and getting rid of the life I had with my parents, the moment in which I became independent and continued exploring different paths as the eminence among the shadows. I think I remember some moments with a bit of nostalgia among my memories. The girls had mentioned that they had to retreat because, according to them, the Diabolos cult is an organization that operates on a global scale. They said something about having to fight them, and they scattered to the four winds. But I understand, in reality they all grew up. That cult doesn't exist. We can't play along with this parody forever, so we free ourselves. That's what they meant. I can't blame them for making such a decision. After all, it's like in my past life. When you grow up, you forget your childhood dreams. It was something logical and understandable. I never forgot the dream I had since I saw that program. Not all people will get the idea in their heads to follow a dream that in the end is impossible to follow. Even people from another world have their limits, although perhaps deep down I hoped they wouldn't do it so quickly. When I realized again I was alone, it was just me continuing a child's dream even with more than 30 years mentally since my old life, and now it is. Despite all this time I could not and I cannot leave this dream which has always tied me. Sometimes I think uselessly that perhaps it is an impossible dream, other times that I can propose more things. But those thoughts remain only that. Subtle thoughts that will never amount to anything. They were by my side and carried out missions together with me for quite some time, without any pay or objection. Their attitude was completely obedient, and they even made magnificent interpretations. Even to this day they offer to play along with me even though they must know that this cult of devils does not exist, to avoid telling me in person. It is not something that bothers me. In fact, their support despite everything has helped me on occasions, although I cannot deny that day they left. I felt a little lonely, and suddenly the days I felt that a small spark was not the same. But well, I was not going to give up on my dream just because my subordinates had reached their limit. Seeing them grow and live their lives and treating me with the same respect as before and improving in every quality even makes me sometimes think, I almost believe you don't want to follow this path and are just pretending to act too well. I was already fighting alone in my solitary battle from that moment on. Such actions remind me of that day. It doesn't matter, that stopped mattering a long time ago. Now all that matters is that I must follow my dream despite everything that is going to happen from now on and live my life the way I want, being a good background character, having some secondary ones and being the eminence in the shadows, but above all, obtaining more power. It's always the same. Even if I end up being the last person left in this world, I will continue to strive to be the eminence in the shadows. Those were the words I said the first day I arrived in Midgar, and I will follow through with the idea until the end. But I think that even though I know it myself, it seems that I am intentionally ignoring it. The fact that I may have already achieved what I long for and I am simply looking for a way to extend this forever? I don't believe that it can't be possible because I need more power. But somehow, why do I feel a void? Chapter 27. Confrontation. The black-haired boy with eyes of the same color in the company of the girl with long albino hair with dark stripes and crimson eyes continued their way in search of what was a legend which was unknown if it was true or not, but after everything they both lived, even they knew it. That legend seemed to be true, and they continued their way in those deep ruins. As time passed abnormally and both advanced until they reached what was the destination for which they had originally come, they noticed the end of a road. The end of the road surprised both the dark-eyed boy and the crimson-eyed girl. When they arrived, there was only a completely white space isolated from what was the world they knew. The surroundings began to shine a blue hue, Some scribbles on the surrounding stones also turned blue while the place only trembled and the whole place disappeared to leave only that white space. When they both looked into each other's eyes, Hannah took Cid's hand to avoid losing sight of him. After all, it was the action that she performed as instinct in the face of a completely strange situation, and she could only be a little calm next to the only thing that was not strange to her, the action of humans in the face of danger if it is not self-defense, if it is not the possibility of fleeing. It is clinging to the only thing they are sure of that may be able to help them after all. They managed to arrive, huh? A voice in that white space had resonated throughout the place where they both were. When the boy with dark eyes and black hair turned his gaze towards the place where he heard that unusual sound that seemed to be described as soft and fine, as if it were some kind of presence different from the one he was usually used to. A huge figure. According to his calculations, the figure was 20 meters tall. That figure gave off multiple colors which filled with a blue energy above what seemed to be its head. The space where they were had changed. White spots were around as if it were now space itself. The white color was distorted to black as soon as this creature appeared. His long blades that he held in each arm were so big that they reached his feet, while at the same time two kinds of strange energy shields intertwined with each other. A large blue cape supplied him with energy. The highest authority that was sought for years and had never been discovered before, the authority that surpassed in this world, an entity which could not be simply described by own words, but in the eyes of any person, was not something normal. Clearly, the first thing a person would think besides a total shock and freezing of finding such a being of such inhuman magnitude in this world would be, who is it? Where am I? Why do I feel a strange, unusual, familiar feeling? It was definitely not something that could possibly be described at the time. This kind of presence, this magical power, and the mysterious feeling it displays, this would have to be the important background character. Some kind of divine being or some kind of boss of some organization? The presence I felt was a strong sensation. Perhaps I hadn't experienced it before, yes, perhaps since that day. The day the dark-eyed boy met the living legend of this inhospitable world, Diabolos, the being who almost destroyed the world and was stopped by the three heroes, the highest authority that ever set foot on this world, and that only one word could define it: chaos. N/T. This is clearly a reference to the fact that Cid in this story did live through the events of the video game event Master's Shadow Garden. For PC/mobile, this video game is canonical, written by Daisuke Aizawa, and canonically occurs after Vol 4 but before 5. This fanfic is set after Vol 5 but before 6. In this fanfic, Cid can now better sense the divine sensations and presences thanks to meeting the same demon that terrorized the entire world 1,000 years ago. The air I feel in this place reminds me a bit of the kind of air I felt when I was near that huge big guy the last time I met, when I saw that strange device that brought me to another place along with the girls. Although the presence I feel is less in this place, but it was definitely a recognizable sensation that had now been recorded in my memory and mind. The feeling of being in an unknown place. Of course, that time, I only remember having entered a completely different place and seeing something strange in the sky. What I thought was some classic background villain that perhaps brought me to this place. It was a boss who didn't hesitate to attack me even though I wasn't transformed into the eminence in the shadows or gave off some unparalleled magical power. The day I let my guard down and was attacked by a demon king? It almost seems ironic. Since that day I was able to come to a conclusion. The bosses in this place or entities can know or somehow detect the beings of this world. Perhaps that would explain why they act in such a strange way when Alpha and the others are near them. Perhaps that explains my last encounter with that person. The time the dark-eyed boy met a seemingly human figure with a mask that hid his face. But he could feel something inside that person, something that his brain could perfectly understand, and his sense. That person was strong. These were the words of Cid Kagenou when he was able to find the fourth member of the Round Table, Loki, in a particular way. Something that the boy didn't know was that Loki could perfectly understand the power that the child possessed inside, a power that he had never seen before. But the Round simply didn't take much importance to that matter after all. Although he knew that the child was strong, he couldn't know exactly all the power that the child harbored. The power that Cid had at that moment that Loki could detect was a tiny part of what he truly had. But it was enough for Loki to understand why that child was clearly not normal. Although Loki was not interested in a fight with someone strong, and was simply in that place to take care of his charges. The hypothesis in this world and my conclusion is that the stronger a background character is, the easier it is to detect someone's hidden power even if they intentionally hide it. It seems to be a kind of natural ability that you get from being too strong. It's something normal. Cid Kagenou could know how strong his opponent was if he wanted to. But he was not interested in that. After all, he wanted to keep the fun and that one day a surprise would come out. He only used this ability in moments where weak background characters, or perhaps in tournaments or training classes at his school. He also used it when some NCP villain reached his limit and could no longer offer him more. He tried to guess moments before executing a deadly attack if that person hides more power through the eye of truth looking at him for his spiritual connection in itself. But almost always it was like that. They were all the same. They all had a limit, and a disappointing limit for the boy who even content never even considered an opponent a slightly tedious challenge. They were all easy prey. That's what he believed until he met the being that almost killed him for the first time that day. A being he never knew was Diabolos, the demon he invented. It was apparently real, but in his eyes it was just another monster, but a monster worth it. From that day on he learned something interesting. When you're in terrain with this type of air, it's predictable that something will happen. A surprising light tried to catch the dark-eyed boy, but he jumped, evading that yellowish light that tried to catch him. When he looked up, he noticed another light which tried to catch him, without the possibility of using magic to block that light. He propelled himself backwards while he was in the air, generating a small shock wave without needing to use magic other than his natural physical strength. The little girl who was with him continued holding his hand, but she knew that the environment was not in their favor. Without the possibility of using magic, Cid was defenseless, and that creature of enormous size did not look exactly good. This is bad. The mana is still out. Without the ability to use magic in this place, any attempt is useless. But what are you going to do now? Without magic you're defenseless, even you won't be able to hold on. That thing is too strong. Yeah, that's what I would probably say 3 years ago. Huh! With a smile that displayed confidence on the face of the dark-eyed boy, he only continued dodging the attempts of light attacks that continued to reach him. Hannah still could not understand the last answer that Cid had given her, but she could not think about it after being in a life/death situation. Deep down she could not help but feel a strange emotion that she had never felt before in her life. Listen carefully, girl, this is going to be my first lesson for you. First lesson? Are you kidding? This isn't the time for. While they were in the air, one of the lights hit Cid, causing him to release Hannah, noticing that the light was taking Cid up a great distance, while she was falling. She showed concern towards Cid, trying to reach his hand uselessly. She fell to the ground. Hermano! Multiple lights continued hitting that adolescent figure, who continued receiving without being able to do anything to stop those lights, which were increasingly faster and more precise. Each light hit with such force that any knight would have broken his bones from just receiving one of those lights. While the lights continued hitting him, Hannah, who was already on the ground in annoyance, tried to use her magic, but it was completely useless. Any attempt to use her magic was useless in the center of the world. The slightest molecule of mana from the outside was incompatible in a place so isolated from it, which made magic useless. Enough is enough, you're hurting him. The ultimate test to get what you want is to impress me. If you are not able to do it, you are not worthy. What kind of stupid test is that? So the other tests were just a waste of time? The tests are so that not just anyone can access this site. If you can complete them, you will be worthy of facing the final test. No magic? Are you serious? It's almost unfair, and it's a trap. That's why no one gets through here. This damn monster is a coward. Without magic, anyone could win. Okay, I think I'm done analyzing it. While I was pushed by those lights, I held one with my hand and managed to drain it. The procedure was as follows: if I couldn't obtain and use my own magic, I needed some external source which I could take advantage of. This environment doesn't contain a shred of mana that I can use to my advantage. However, these lights seem to be quite interesting sources of magic. But this magic is unusual. Even I, who use magic from the outside environment to save my magical reserves and spend the minuscule amount of magic aside from my mastery over it, it was quite difficult for me to take advantage of this, but there's nothing I can't do. From my arms I began to channel and connect the links one by one to slowly release my magic. The absorption was now being effective. Interesting, very interesting. What have you done? I discovered something very interesting about this place. Mana does exist, but the type of magic in this environment is incompatible with living beings outside because it's a different kind of mana. But as long as you get your body used to handling it, it shouldn't be a problem. Impossible. The magic of the environment in this place is magic from the center of the world itself. A magic so heavy and so difficult to control can only be used by those beings from thousands of years ago. A human like you could never use it. After those words, a sharp claw tried to pierce Cid Kagenou's body, who only stopped that claw with the edge of a new weapon now in his possession. The slime sword had been materialized and the magic transaction was now complete. The path to the center of the world is 100% devoid of magic because there is no living being that lives, and if there is, its magic is drained because the place has multiple barriers that act as protection. In addition, the change makes it impossible to proceed. However, since they arrived with that mysterious creature, Cid Kagenou had realized something, that the place that surrounded him was not the same as the place they had just passed. The difference from before, where Cid Kagenou could not feel the presence of magic or any molecule in the environment. When they arrived at that place, Cid Kagenou could notice that the place where they were, unlike the road to this one, he felt the environment different. When that creature appeared, the environment changed noticeably. It was not until it released those strange lights that he understood it instantly. That place, unlike the previous one, did have magic, but it was a different type of magic than usual, a magic that could be classified as a type of divine magic, if that were what he thought in some type of shonen manga. But in reality it was only one type of magic that a single being had. Every semi-divine being in this world had types of magic. Some were incompatible, others compatible. Diabolos had a magic compatible with the world that he could share, but the semi-divine being of the void did not have a compatible magic. Anyone who used it would die from excess magic, being a type of magic that was too strong. This was not a problem for Cid, who, having great magical reserves but above all, the talent and genius of combat, and a body which could hardly be considered human due to the great amount of power obtained and being an anomaly, he could take advantage of it, even being able to condense such an enormous amount of magic. No one in this world could have done it if it were not him. But even for Cid it was impossible to take magic from the outside. He needed physical contact with a large amount of magic in order to use it. This was because his body was not yet used to absorbing magic as if it were the air itself as it happened outside. The disadvantage of this was the damage that Cid could accumulate by absorbing such a risky method. Even if he managed to use and master magic, he was still a human, and an incompatible magic was simply and logically unstable. If he drained or expelled too much energy, his body could explode. He could feel it, and he knew it. Ha ha ha. What's funny? Even if you can use the mana of this place, no matter how strong you are, you will not be able to resist the magic of the void. Void magic is a type of magic that is unique to the void. It doesn't exist anywhere else but here, and only I can wield it at will. Living beings here are unable to obtain it naturally. I'm surprised that you could use it, but if there's a reason your body couldn't initially obtain it, it's for a reason, right? That's right, it's because your body can't withstand it. The more you use magic, your lifespan will run out. At those words, little Hannah, who was on the ground, was completely petrified. The magic that Cid was using at that moment was draining her life. While she watched that enormous being, she turned her gaze towards Cid, who simply continued with the same expression as always, without worries. Then I just have to kill you before my time is up. When mentioning those words, a small shudder felt that being from the void, which only felt something that he had never felt before, a strange sensation. A sensation that he could not describe, but if he could describe it was something that could not let him move properly. Ignoring that comment, he only launched an attack that he even had unexpected before those words. Those spheres of lights that he used so much against that human, but this time they had something different. The spheres were bigger and moved faster. In turn, the quantity increased greatly. Hermano! Seeing those spheres approaching Cid in a great way, he only began to move faster on the sight, but inevitably some hit him in the body, causing him to impact in different places. The spheres now hurt his body so much that even if Cid could move his organs, Something impossible because he could not master 100% the magic of the void, and that it was risky because that incompatible magic would do more damage. The skin that received the damage already generated a sensation of pain. Instead of showing signs of pain or tiredness, a smile began to slowly emerge from his face while his gaze, which was upside down, began to rise. Some strange purple lights on both of the boy's hands began to shine. The lights which continued to hit him began to slowly fade away and leave him as if they simply disappeared out of nowhere. He just looked at the creature that was in all the space with a smile that was accompanied by blood coming out of his mouth. His eyes, which were black, now burned with a crimson as intense as hell itself. That person did not suffer. He did not agonize over pain like any other person. Instead, an uncontrollable urge with no apparent logical explanation began to emerge from his being. The feeling of restlessness in that creature only grew more and more without any apparent control. Overdrive. As he spoke those words, the dark-eyed boy's magical eyes turned crimson with purple flashes, as if for a moment they were going to burst from the purple flash that came out of those two eyes. The boy's vision had therefore been intensified. He could see everything in a strange blue/white color. His eyes now allowed him to see through the body of the void being, its internal organs including his own soul, and a kind of gray color. Interesting. This magic is more powerful than I could have thought. When I use overdrive on my eyes, it is normally to activate my combat magic or to see things more clearly. On this occasion, I used overdrive magic in order to see the results I could obtain. Oh. Void rift. Void crack. Behind Cid, a dark/reddish gap appeared behind him. While he was in the air, he just looked at that strange gap before he could do anything. The gap was closed, and he had completely disappeared. That feat was observed by the girl with crimson eyes who, upon seeing what had happened, could only utter a few words. No. Cid's presence had disappeared completely from this plane apparently. For the first time, Hannah could not feel her brother at all. Even when he sometimes played with his opponents, she could feel his energy, and this time she could not feel anything. Incomplete test. Apparently he was not worthy of passing the test. What did you do? With annoyance in her being, the little girl raised her voice at that creature that was only floating as it had happened since the first time they entered this place, and found it for the first time. The test consists of beating me or surprising me to overcome the test and be the chosen one. If you are given the opportunity to even enter this site, you will have captured my interest. If, despite that, you fail, it was nothing more than a mere illusion. I don't understand. The little girl, who all this time was looking angrily at the creature in front of her eyes, which was more than 5 times her size, without apparent fear she began to approach. Beating me, surprising me, fighting, struggling, does it make any sense? The test is to overcome your past only then. It's the same old thing. Where I come from, everyone yearns for power. I just hear that word over and over and over and over again. Only that way. It's all about power. Does that have any meaning? You can pass the test. It's the same everywhere, my family, everyone I know. Why do they end up dying in such a stupid way? Power? Why can't they just think for once about something other than fighting and having power? Let me guess, I don't even need to know. That compliments the goddess. I forgot, you don't even have a soul. When mentioning those words, the creature did nothing but continue his sentences over and over again without stopping. There were 10, there were 20, there were 30, there would be thousands of times without a specific stop. Now that the test had failed, the little girl had the choice to stay or leave or challenge the being from the void. While the being from the void was active thanks to Hannah being in that place. The site could not be sealed, but the void being would be dormant until a new opponent challenged it. Apparently the little girl was only seeing an empty shell of what the true being of the void was. When the words, soulless, rang out in the place, the lost gaze of that being from the void had shown for the first time since the dark-eyed boy had previously challenged him. Something had come back to itself. Regardless of whether or not this was an empty shell, those words seemed to reach an indispensable point of the emptiness of this world. That creature slightly arched his pupil in the direction of the little girl, who only looked at him with a disinterested look that hid the pain of having lost another loved one in front of her eyes without being able to do absolutely anything. Complete the test or else you will be the test. How sad it is to have to live this way, isn't it? You only come out when someone challenges you, and if that weren't enough, you set unfair traps beforehand. Does a guy like you ever feel afraid? Can't you handle problems on your own and put up decent tests? I forgot, continue your stupid sentence. I see that humans are very talkative. Ah, so you have an impressive brain. Hannah noticed strangely that the creature had raised its gaze upwards. At the moment in which she raised her gaze upwards, she could notice a strange reddish/black color with now purple touches without a place of origin in the sight itself begin to form. The dimensional gap that connected both planes began to be slowly released until an explosion of magical energy swept away the entire place. The entire empty world began to tremble at that explosion caused by the magic wave. A male voice began to slowly resonate throughout the place, as if it were a space/time echo which distorted reality itself. Atomic sword. After those words, that mysterious light which had opened in space/time, more specifically the dimensional gap, began to tremble in an unusual way until it slowly began to open without any apparent logical form. A strong wind wave hit the gap, forcing it open, creating a visible space where both realities could be observed. Cid was in another dimensional plane in another dimension which had no particular design, it was only pure darkness. Differentiated from the void dimension where they were. The dimension was open thanks to the cut made by the crimson-eyed boy, who was now being covered in his characteristic black slime suit with some golden edges and decorations. His slime sword was in his right hand ready to use it. Brother? Feeling that familiar sensation once again, the little girl had realized something. Her brother had once again made his presence felt when she hadn't been able to feel him before, which meant he wasn't dead. The idea that Cid was dead, even though it was crossed by the girl, had been the most terrifying moments of her life for a few moments. Although she couldn't express it, the feeling of being completely alone again wasn't something she liked at all, but deep down she also hoped that her brother would return sooner or later. Such a mixture of emotions had somehow overwhelmed her. Not only did you manage to escape from the dimension I created, but now you are using void magic to your advantage to a greater extent. In a way, this is the part where the eminence in the shadows comes into action and challenges the final boss of this place, Cuckoo. It's a shame that emptiness is at the center of the world. Because they'll never be able to find your body like this. After those words, laughter began to invade the void. Such laughter was so loud that it even gave the sensation that at any moment it would collapse the entire place. The first laugh of the void being was caused by a human. As if the pain meant nothing at all, the determination of that human was what finally captivated him towards that creature which he recognized for the first time. If in this world there could exist any definition of good and evil, this boy did not represent any of the two previously mentioned. If he were a hero who fights for justice, if he were someone evil who wants to conquer the world. Despite everything, the darkness that invades this boy is of such magnitude that it cannot be considered justice itself at all, but his intentions counteract that side. The perfect definition of the eminence in the shadows. The boy who lost everything in exchange for getting everything. The story of a boy who lost his humanity in exchange for obtaining power. This was the story of Cid Kagenou, a reincarnated man who only seeks to satisfy his appetite for more power. If that even leads him to challenge the whole world, he would do that in order to fulfill his goal. If this were a game, if this were seeing everyone as NPCs, if this were to be just something more than the eminence in the shadows, if it were to be left in absolute solitude, if he were to gain ultimate power and be without rival, if he were to complete his dream, nothing could satisfy the boy's hunger for knowledge and power. Even if that meant being just an empty shell exploring the world like a wanderer. This was the definition of what being the eminence in the shadows meant. If it was to leave everything, it is to leave everything, and that would do without any doubt in his heart. In that case, show me what you are capable of, you mysterious human who has come so far and faces the test of the empty world. Shadow, who had managed to finish breaking the seal that bound his physical body in that dimensional crack, advanced, leaving aside the dimension which closed again. He fell to the ground standing near the small. At the moment of having fallen, Hannah, who throughout the course of the fight had been nothing more than a spectator between the battle that was taking place between the being of the void and Cid Kagenou, finally spoke. "What are you planning, brother? Don't call me brother when I'm transformed. All right, Shadow? To contemplate the end of this encounter as I always do, the shadowy eminence versus the divine being of the void cuckoo sounds like a good idea. Haven't you forgotten something, right? Do you remember? Remember what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, why are you interrupting me now? What should I say? That has no relevance whatsoever. Are you serious? When the darkness finishes the work, then. I can't understand you when you talk like that. Stop hiding what you're saying in a typical phrase of yours." Without any further comment, the atmosphere fell into total silence between the two, as if the atmosphere itself had swallowed up everything one could feel and left it completely empty. "Cut my hair with your magic because you don't want to pay me a stylist the breakfast you usually make stingy, the people around you that I probably don't know and never asked you about. But I know now 2 wolf/cat girls that you treated very well that day. And yet, are you aware of what you're doing? Your life is in danger. Why are you using that strange magic that strange being spoke of? But it didn't seem like you would take it seriously. You even think about continuing the fight as if you didn't care at all. Why? I live my life the way I like. Naturally, I like to live my own solitary lifestyle. But you have family, right? And please, can you still stop? We don't need that wish. We can still come back if necessary. Hannah. This isn't about desire. I'm just going to fight. Whether I'm going to die or not, it doesn't matter to you. And your family? What about those 2 girls from before? I don't like them, but I don't care what my family or others think about me. I live by my own goals and objectives. If I want to achieve something, I'll do it, regardless of whether they agree or not. But why? Because in this world, we all have a purpose or dream to fulfill. Mine is this, and I have my own goals, girl. Please don't do that, don't waste that. A family that cares about you, colleagues who are by your side, wouldn't want you to probably never return to them. Just the fact of arriving and being welcomed is. Why are you talking about a family issue now? Just now, I thought you would never come back. I respected your decision because I believed you could solve it and win. But after seeing that, I couldn't stand it anymore. Why must you risk your life in a simple fight where you won't win anything? Ami helps me improve, and what good is it if you die? Someday, as long as you hold on to that thought, there will be no next time, and then everything you worked hard to achieve will be gone. I guess it was my destiny in that case. No one is invincible. Even if I told you I was invincible, would you believe me, kid? No, but I'm not invincible. I'm looking for ways to become stronger and reach new limits. I'm not satisfied with what I have. Besides seeking power, I'm looking for the lifestyle I like the most. Is pretending to be someone you're not a good way to live? Being a mob, being the eminence in the shadows. Identities and above all, obtaining power. Is something that keeps me alive and I like it. If someone has goals, I don't see anything wrong with trying to achieve them. If at some point my life ends, it means that it was simply time or I didn't achieve what I set out to do, so I failed, that's all. Just like that. But the ones you care about. In life we are all going to die at some point, some later, others sooner. If I died earlier, it was no one's fault. Nor mine. It was because of the lifestyle I lead. And surely if that day came, I would have continued on my path, without getting bored and stagnating without goals. It doesn't make sense, that's. Don't try to make sense of it, you won't no matter how much you want to because my way of thinking is very different from yours and it's not going to change at all. Don't try to do it because that won't help. Now if you excuse me, I'll make my entrance. Shadow just continued on his way, leaving Hannah behind, who was going to say something else, but the words couldn't come out of her mouth after that statement from Cid. Logically, she wasn't going to beat him in the debate, and they were in a fight, and the least interesting thing was now a talk about what is right, and what is wrong, and what she should do and what she shouldn't. apart from the fact that the girl already had an idea of the type of personality her brother used to have. But even she found it sad in an ironic way that Cid couldn't value enough what was around him. Someone who was born constantly losing everything to a point where it was already normal. She felt sorry for a person who hadn't apparently suffered the same but couldn't find the feeling to value. Instead of saying some useless words to try to change Kagenou's ideology, Hannah mentioned something else, something that Cid would surely hear even if he had walked away. "Don't you dare lose, otherwise the eminence in the shadows will have shown me that you were just a weakling." Those words spoken by the girl seemed to have had an effect on that dark figure. The dark figure in a dark slime suit only let out a light sigh as he prepared his next attack. Both figures just looked at each other in a silence that surrounded the entire place. Minutes passed and no figure made a movement. Suddenly the roar of the sound itself was broken into a single movement initiated by that human in a dark suit. Who moved so quickly? That just by moving, the sound barrier was affected and surpassed in an instant. As time began to run over both of them slowly and progressively, multiple small round spheres appeared in an instant next to that being from the void. The spheres that were summoned went from 10 to 100, from 100 to 1000, from 10,000, from 10,000 to 100,000 in a few moments. All the spheres that had a single color, which was blue/yellowish. They began their pursuit of the boy with crimson eyes and a black slime suit. As time slowed down for each of them, before the spheres managed to touch Shadow, an energy around his body began to come out in an extroverted way on the outside. A kind of purple/dark aura began to surround him in a hot and inconspicuous way. The energy could barely be seen, but it was enough to be seen with the naked eye. Rising atomic. After finishing with those words, the dark figure had disappeared again, only to appear behind that being of the void and launch an attack which fired a large burst of purple magic combined a little with yellowish flashes. The magic not only hit that being of the void from behind, also Shadow's own enhanced magical force was used in that counterattack. Shadow, who launched that attack, managed for a few moments to damage reality itself. As if they were pieces of scattered glass, they began to separate, leaving for a few moments to see what were some residual images of other places different from the one they were fighting. That feat had taken Shadow himself by surprise, who looked at those crystals moments before they disappeared. In one of those crystals, he managed to see a shadow that particularly caught his attention. The shadow had a suit similar to him, but it was completely white with hair of the same color and red eyes among other figures. Without being able to understand 100% what they were about, the boy observed a strange one that seemed familiar to him. A person similar to him with his slime suit, apparently with damage and multiple wounds in combat. He was surrounded by 7 beautiful girls who were only crying around. That cry, although it was very brief, reached the heart of the boy, who recognized those voices from somewhere. Thanks to having the overdrive ability active, his vision was amplified with great magic, making it so that even tiny details could be detected by him. "Shadow-sama! It just can't be. This isn't true. That voice is..." With that moment of distraction, the boy felt a strong sensation on his back, which almost immediately turned into a pain that almost crossed the line. Unbearable, even though he had the slime protecting him. When he lowered his guard for that moment of distraction, his defenses were not at 100%, and they could not cushion the impact more. If it were not for his slime suit that helped a little, the attack could have been worse. When he turned around to see what hit him, he noticed how something that seemed completely meaningless was doing it. The figure of a lightning bolt was hitting him. A lightning bolt struck his own back. Before he could think if it was a real natural lightning bolt that hit him, he noticed how a large dark-colored shadow, as if it were a large sharp piece, it was buried under his back. Such action caused that as soon as he received that attack, Shadow was completely thrown in multiple directions of the void which had no end. The force was such that even Shadow felt for a few moments that those moments where he was falling and falling had no end. Without the possibility of being able to stop. Without the possibility of being able to stop. Without the possibility of being able to properly look at what had happened. Doubt. They invaded his head trying to find the answer, more than what he saw. How was it possible that that living creature hit him if he directly received an attack from him? As if he were a projectile, he continued falling and falling and falling, his expression changing for the first time to an almost furrowed frown. Shadow forced his own body to stop falling using magic to begin to decelerate, but there was something strange. As soon as Shadow managed to slowly slow down his speed as he fell again without apparent explanation, increased again to the beginning. I can't stop my body. As a strange sound began to resonate in the void, the figure could be seen, which was made of bones from the back down. Even one of its apparent eyes was made of bone. Shadow's rising atomic attack had managed to penetrate the defense of the void creature and damage it. But even though it was covered in wounds and some limbs had lost so much superficial layer that even the skeleton seemed visible, an extraordinary regeneration began to emerge. The tissues began to join together as if it were fabric sewing a needle in an almost immediate way. At the same time, the smile that the creature had that its skeleton reflected began to disappear slowly to the point that its skin was regenerated. The skin began to close the strange skeletal remains that apparently remained of that creature. When it closed its mouth without any expression. Inertia and the laws of physics do not apply in the empty world. I can control this place as I wish. No matter how hard you try, you will not be able to stop it. Damn. After saying those words, a girl with crimson eyes clicked her tongue and tried to use magic to try to do something for her brother, who was falling and falling and falling with no apparent end. You can stop with magic instantly if you want to, but the speed at which you are falling is too much. If you use void magic to stop yourself, you could even die from the force exerted. Tisk. Shadow tried multiple ways to stop his inevitable fall with magic, slowly reducing his speed, but it was useless. As soon as his speed decreased, he would again propel himself forward without apparent logic. As soon as he managed to slow down, his speed even seemed to increase. I'll have to form a shield so my body doesn't get hurt. Even if I suddenly break, the force of the impact will destroy me from the inside. It's a shame for you. That creature began to gather multiple magic spheres into one. Above all, the spheres began to gather without stopping, beginning to form an enormous sphere that stood out from all the spheres, such a sphere that continued to increase its size without stopping. Eclipse Tyrant. Tyranny of the Eclipse. As the sphere began to form, a strange dark mist began to form after mentioning those words. The mist which clouded the little girl's vision, with the exception of Shadow thanks to his magic overdrive, began to take off over the battlefield. That mist had no effect apparently on either of the two. Magic, 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 salt, curse, see magic. With an almost useless effort, Hannah tried to use her magic. She wasn't one to fight. She wasn't one to even use her magic just like that. The fear that it could get out of control. The fear that something could happen if she used her powers recklessly was still tied to her like a chain. But now she wanted something completely different. She no longer cared at all if she got out of control or not, or even if the magic she used was reckless. She only wanted to save her brother. She only wanted to do something to help Shadow. She could not stand being a spectator anymore, trusting Shadow until the last, but above all to not bother Shadow. She could notice that even Shadow had his limits. He was a human after all, and Shadow had said it indirectly. Why now? Why when I want to help someone important? Why can't I do it? Am I not just a vile bystander who destroys everything around him? Even trying uselessly to use magic without success, the small sparks formed began to have their first effects, but the sparks could not form a connection strong enough to launch anything. A spark? Magic is. Atomic sword! Shadow, who continued falling without stopping. While he closed his eyes for a few moments, he had managed to gather enough magic for one more attack. Although he could do this with his physical strength plus a little bit of mafia, Shadow wanted to get rid of the creature that was making him fall without stopping multiple times once and for all. While falling, in one of his upward falls he aimed with the help of his overdrive ability. He channeled his vision, magically amplifying it, and launched a large directional straight cut towards that creature. The creature, who had barely managed to see that attack, tried uselessly to stop it with its magic, but as soon as it formed from the void, that attack split it in two completely. The crack formed by the atomic sword was so violent that the ground showed multiple different scenarios, as if reality were once again broken by that attack. But that creature began to join together after that attack, to the surprise of even Shadow, who had launched that attack with greater intention than the previous one, it had not managed to have any effect at all. Oh! Dark matter sphere. Dark matter sphere. That sphere was thrown towards the boy who, upon seeing how the sphere slowly began to fall, began to force his muscles with annoyance, trying to make his last attempts to stop, but when he noticed that nothing had any effect, he gave a long sigh. This will probably hurt, yeah, without pain there can't be a plot, right? While the slime surrounding him acquired a structure that was forming in multiple layers, in turn a magic barrier was forged in his own body to reduce possible damage. Shadow suddenly achieved what he longed for. He stopped, however, the force exerted to stop took his body to the limit for a few moments, preventing any possibility of moving at all. Taking advantage of that opportunity, the being from the void had launched his sphere of energy. Despite having been cut in two, despite being divided in two, despite the simple fact of receiving a deadly attack for anyone, he was able to regenerate from it, and was able to complete the attack that was intended for the one who would do the test. That teenager with crimson eyes in an elegant dark suit. The attack was heading faster and faster towards its target without any possibility of counterattacking or dodging. Shadow only tried to reinforce his body as much as possible. Although he couldn't move, at least he could reinforce his body with magic used from the void to withstand the attack. The attack was about to touch Shadow, brushing his lock of hair. Shadow, who had already foreseen that he would not be able to dodge or block that attack, only reinforced his body to try to withstand it. Despite his attempt at reinforcement, he knew that if that attack connected with him, it would cause great damage. That is why, as soon as he received that attack, he had to counterattack quickly, otherwise he would be at a disadvantage. The magic of the void was already beginning to generate consequences in his body. He did not know how much longer he could endure the magic that acted more like a poison for his system, without the possibility of using normal magic from the outside world to be able to detoxify or heal himself. Shadow did not have the option to counteract the side effects. Naturally, his body is very strong and is able to withstand some poisons due to its great rapid adaptation. Even without magic, poisons like those of his partner Ada, official member of the Seven Shadows, could not harm or kill him. Some of those poisons were poisonous dragon blood, others were simply artificially created by her, and others were bought from this world. However, on this occasion, it was not any type of poison that poisoned Shadow. If not rather a type of magic to which his body could not yet adapt properly, this was due to void magic, a type of magic unique to one place. In this world there are many different places, some of which humans naturally do not have the possibility of surviving due to the environment, or magic which acts more like a poison than a help. Of course, with preparation and time he would probably be able to master any type of obstacle he set his mind to, but he couldn't perform miracles either. Although the void magic could be used by the crimson-eyed boy, it didn't stop him from using it. It put a great burden on his body, which without detoxifying magic that could help avoid the effects, or a time of rest, is slowly consuming him without ceasing. While preparing for the attack, something unexpectedly interrupted the clash that was destined to occur between that sphere of dark energy and Shadow. Shadow for a few moments felt as if he was in a completely different place than where they were. When he opened his eyes, leaving only one of his eyes closed to continue storing the magical energy in one point, he could notice that he was in a completely different place. Everything also seemed to spin. In the place where Shadow was, he could notice in the surroundings a kind of reddish space with multiple boards which surrounded it. The floor where he was stepping was a huge black/white puzzle cube. Now where am I? Did that sphere transport me to this place? Is it another dimension like the other one? The space began to collapse. Shadow suddenly noticed that everything began to fall and crumble slowly as if the entire structure was unstable. The site cracked and revealed a part of the place where they were, that completely white site which was now invaded by that dark mist which even affected the system of the void itself. The apparent dimension finished breaking and Shadow returned to the void where he was originally. After returning, he could notice that now not only was he no longer sliding on that place as if it were a bullet, his body had stopped, but he was also in another place far from what was originally going to be the dark sphere which ended up impacting the floor of the void, that floor which was apparently nothingness. It began to tremble from that energy. and generated multiple cracks from which residual images of other worlds could be seen in them. Ah! Hannah, who was on her knees, began to sigh in an agitated manner without an apparent explanation. Shadow, who was near her, now approached Hannah and looked at her without understanding what was apparently happening. What's going on? Apparently I managed to tap into some of that strange void energy they talk about so much, but I didn't imagine it would be so painful. Using vacuum energy? What are you talking about? I still can't compare to you in energy management, but I managed to use a little of the energy of this place to use my power. I couldn't let you receive that attack. Idiot brother. Did you just say that you managed to manipulate and utilize the energy of this place? This energy is so dense and heavy that even Epsilon or Alpha couldn't master magic of this magnitude. Even if they could, it would take them a long time. Even I certainly took time to get used to it. If I had let you get that thing, you probably wouldn't even be here. Now do you understand what I'm trying to say? This is the second time that she. Stop making silly mistakes, even if you want to show off while you have no magic and no knowledge of what you're up against. How do you expect to turn out well? I already had everything calculated. You weren't going to move from that spot until I got you out. If you had received it, even if you didn't die right there, you would have been in a bad way. You have limited time, so why are you wasting it playing? The fun is much better if you enjoy the main dish before devouring it completely. But even if I wanted to do it, I can't. Apparently the magic of the void is much heavier than I imagined, and I can barely gather enough magical energy to counterattack. I even managed to gather magical energy for 3 previous attacks that required a good amount, plus the physical strength used in my magic control. I'm useless. I must admit that this guy is a very persistent subject. I still need to accumulate magic to perform my supreme technique. All this time I was gathering magical energy apart from what I was already using, separating both, but I can't do it. If I keep receiving attacks and focus on defense, then in that case, I will have to borrow more energy from the void. I didn't want to resort to that, since even so little magical energy manages to paralyze me for a few moments. If I take more magical energy, I don't know what other effects it could have, but if I continue like this, in the long run I'll end up exhausted, so it's best to take the risk. Probably the first or second strongest NPC boss I've ever faced. I name you being of the void Zargith, and declare you a subject worthy of being the opponent of the eminence in the shadows. Unfortunately for you, Zargith, the games are over. By the way, that thing from a few moments ago. I didn't think I'd be able to release this without going crazy or even borrowing a little magic. I was about to tell you something else. What are you talking about? I still haven't reached your level of magical control, but at least I'm glad I can temporarily use this without losing control. I suppose this is because it only took so little magic for a phenomenon of that magnitude to occur. The lessons are taking effect. I guess I was wrong about you. I'll have to teach you more magical control. In that case. Wait, are you serious? Are you going to train me after this? Oh no, I didn't mean that. I'll think about it. It's a deal, girl, but I want you to give me a lot. You're so greedy, and it's not my fault you lost the gold that time I worked so hard to get. That magic power, no, it's not a coincidence. It's impossible for a girl to use void magic. I can believe that this guy did it, but a girl shouldn't have enough magic ability to withstand it without exploding. No, she didn't use void magic. Hannah's power being equivalent to an anomaly in this world caused by Cid Kagenou. Her own power is as if it were another divine entity hidden deep within her being, which is unknown. Unlike Cid Kagenou, Hannah does not need void magic or absorb it because she possesses her own magic, which she can use without being drained. A disadvantage of the void is that if there are other semi-divine/divine beings like the void or powerful enough, be it the calamity demon Diabolos and others, their own magic can be used without the disadvantage of the void consuming it. This is because it is such a powerful magic that it could not be drained. Normal and classic magic can do it due to its light system that even the weakest of the weak can use. Chapter 28, Culmination. Why is your left eye closed? You'll find out later. For now, just watch as the eminence in the shadows takes care of all the darkness. Yes. Shadow began to flex his limbs a little, moving his arms, flexing his legs little by little. He began to warm up again for what was the last round and the battle that would define the winner on this occasion. I guess it's time. Summoning his weapon once again in his hands with just a little of the slime that his suit already had, which had a paler color than usual due to the void magic that changed the color of Shadow's suit due to the magical reaction to the new type of magic generated. Shadow looked at his opponent, who only summoned more of those strange energy spheres that he had previously launched. Don't you have any other skills anymore? How boring. It's a shame for you, it will all end now. Summoning more of the black/white spheres, the void being called by Shadow, Zargeth. Time began to slow down again within that confrontation. Shadow, who was a little taller than an average human, and the being from the void who was more than double that, stood face to face. The spheres of light surrounded that being, who only kept his gaze on that human, the only person in his entire life who managed to hurt him and above all give him so many problems. Shadow, the eminence in the shadows, was a name that had already been engraved in his memory, and that could be considered the first worthy opponent he ever had. And the first opponent to overcome the impossible test of defeating him and overcoming all obstacles. That enormous size that characterized that being began to condense more and more, until it became only something bigger than Shadow. He had taken a humanoid form to fight. I would never have expected to have to use this power to fight against someone, and even more so against a human mortal. But I recognize your courage and power. On the other hand, Shadow, who only saw Zargeth as one more goal in his objective, if he defeated Zargeth it was a further growth in his power. Although Zargeth was beginning to bore Shadow something, Shadow could not deny about that god. The title of God of the Void is not small for him at all, after that demon who shook the world thousands of years ago. Diabolos, Zargeth was undoubtedly the strongest being that Shadow had faced. Opponents like Fenrir, Mordred, Loki, even the Seven Shadows in their transformation. None had been as strong as the opponent that Shadow was facing at this moment, who had given him a great fight. My name is Shadow, I hunt in the shadows, I stalk in the shadows. As a token of respect, you will have the honor of having the games end for you and knowing what the eminence in the shadows is truly capable of. It was not what Shadow would expect, if he had all his magic, if he were not weakened in the void zone, being forced to absorb a magic that intoxicates him and also does not make him show all his power as it should be and causes him constant pain, the balance would be different. Probably this would not be a worthy battle. Zargeth is undoubtedly a being that Shadow had now earned a little respect for his power as a villain and title of demigod of the void. An NPC villain considered boss by Cid. But probably if Shadow had all his power, Zargeth would not have had the opportunity at any time to hurt Shadow the way he currently does. But that was also fine for Shadow. Facing opponents in his zone and defeating them would show that no matter where and under what conditions, he would always emerge victorious. It was a great test for him after all, and it was what he could best demonstrate. Both launched themselves at each other. Zargeth moved for the first time and launched himself at his opponent. Shadow also launched himself at his opponent, who now had a totally different new appearance. He was no longer the enormous creature from before. Now he was a creature with a different appearance, taking a humanoid form but with features very different from a person. He was still a monster in every aspect. Zargeth's speed had logically increased after the condensation of his size accordingly. His spheres which surrounded him were still in force at his side with a smaller size but with greater brightness, obtaining more power. Zargeth tried to attack Shadow with his long left claw, however to his surprise Shadow stopped his claw with his sword, which blocked that attack to a large extent, with another attempt at counterattack. With his right claw, Shadow also stopped that attack, but this time with his bare hand. Shadow expelled more magic from his body and launched himself directly towards Zargeth, connecting a kick in his abdomen, causing him to be thrown against the void itself, without letting Zargeth rest. Shadow launched himself again, connecting another blow in his face, causing him to crash twice on the ground, which opened multiple cracks and went through multiple rocks of the same. Trying to channel the energy to send it towards his opponent, Zargeth began to gather energy. Sphere of material. Before he could complete his sentence, a strong sensation prevented him from connecting. When he also looked down, he noticed a punch surrounded by dark energy. When he looked up, he noticed his opponent, who was smiling. That hooded human who managed to give him so many problems. Those spheres are very annoying, a boring technique. Is that all the semi-divine being offers? Come on, final boss, I know you're a very strong NPC, but this is already tedious. Lightning flash, murderous burst. Lightning flash, killer burst. His opponent's eyes had now turned blue, his fists were now surrounded by a gray energy. They lunged at Shadow, completely ignoring the previous damage he had received. Those blows approached the face of the hooded young man, who only extended his smile. Hands began to fly. When he barely reviewed what was happening, Shadow's sword had cut through Zargeth's fists. It's a shame for you, a real shame. Shadow connected a strong kick again on Zargeth, moving him away at great speed. Zargeth, who was rising due to the enormous force with which he was hit by Shadow, tried to stop in the process, but barely. Also, his gaze noticed that Shadow was no longer in the same area. A slight presence was felt by Zargeth behind his back. When he looked away, it was Shadow who pierced his chest with his slime sword, which was infused with void magic, the sword which apparently connected his heart. Not yet, I'm sure the semi-divine being can handle this, right? Shadow grabbed Zargeth's head and began to set it on fire. At the same time, he connected a strong blow on Zargeth again, sending him back to the ground with great impact. Brother? Rising atomic. From the sword of shadow, magic began to gather until it formed a point in which all the magic began to gather in just the tip of his sword, while that being began to fall, before he could even fall, before touching the ground. Shadow launched a great burst of energy towards him, burying himself in multiple non-existent meters in the non-existent ground of that void. Such destructive power was enough to make the entire void tremble. That apparently was nothing more than the center of the world began to tremble uncontrollably. A large layer of smoke formed, mixing between the dark mist that was previously formed when that being had launched it from backward movements. Hannah, noticing that fight, if it could be considered a fight, was surprised, more than by how Shadow took the lead in a short time and was beating up the void being. She was surprised by Shadow's attitude. Although sometimes before she noticed that Shadow was somewhat crazy or even sadistic on few occasions in fights, this time she noticed that there was something completely different about Shadow. He's fighting very roughly, even for him. Why is he doing this? Hannah also looked up again after lowering her gaze to look at that enormous crater that had been left in the area. Said crater began to slowly regenerate in the non-existent space of emptiness. When he raised his gaze to see Shadow, he noticed that he was sighing a little agitated, as if that sequence of attacks had left him tired. What's going on? I was sighing after finishing my attack sequence. For some strange reason, I began to feel a small tremor in my left arm. More than a tremor, it was as if at the moment I hit Zargeth with the sword, I couldn't feel my left arm. But at least I was able to execute the blow without it stopping me. I looked at my left arm again and tried to move it. To my surprise, it had moved just as I had indicated, as if nothing had ever happened. I'm probably approaching my limit. I don't know if I can keep gathering magical energy. I should have enough by now, but... Not feeling my arm, I didn't think the side effect was that serious. I guess I can't help but worry a little now. I tilted my head to look around. I noticed that Hannah was safe. It seems that the range of the rising atomic didn't reach her or cause any damage. And she was in a secluded area. That's good news. I noticed she was looking at me, and when my gaze met hers, she was whispering as if she wanted to tell me something. Before anything else could happen, an explosion shook my senses. I immediately focused my gaze towards the place where that explosion sounded. To my surprise, that being came out completely intact from my rising atomic, which I connected previously. The rising atomic that I had launched was with complete intentions of finishing him off. Although I'm not using the magical energy that I'm reserving as a source, but I'm using the void energy that I receive with every attack that he launches or from the environment itself. The energy had been enough to compare to 50% of what my rising atomic would be. Gaoa! A loud scream shook the whole place. Both Cid and Hannah were completely paralyzed upon hearing that scream. a scream so loud that their senses had been completely paralyzed. Their ears were ringing as if they were going to explode. Hannah fell to the ground from the force, about to faint. Shadow, on the other hand, couldn't move as soon as he heard that scream, his body somehow paralyzed for a few moments. But! GGG! The scream stopped echoing in the place. A figure began to rise, slowly starting to leave the enormous crater that was regenerating from the previous damage caused. The figure had large wings. Each one had fur so hard to the eye that they looked like blades. Black spots completely surrounded that body. Its color had also changed completely. Now it was gray with mixtures of strange black. Occult symbols. That figure began to come out into view of Shadow and Hannah. The last one, seeing the creature come out, remained completely silent, although she couldn't feel it, although she didn't know anything about the league in which the two strangers who were facing each other were. Hannah felt something. Terror. It was the correct response to that feeling. Fear of the unknown, what had come out of that enormous crater, for no apparent reason disturbed her for no apparent reason. She held her head. What is this? Why am I shaking like this? Is it because He who is worthy, only then will the test be free. He will liberate his being and unleash the truth. Huh! Cid was confused by the words of that being, but as soon as he said those words he noticed how Zargith was approaching him. Being a few meters close to him, Shadow instinctively defended himself using his sword as a shield which received the attack. Shadow noticed a slight crack in his slime sword to his surprise, but before he could even do anything, a strong sensation had run through his chest. He barely looked down when he noticed a large fist hit him. At the attack, Shadow released blood which fell from his mouth. Guh! Hannah, who was still completely paralyzed by seeing that being emerge, reacted as soon as she saw how in a tiny bit of time that being was no longer there, and now, as if that weren't enough, it hit Shadow. I couldn't see when it moved. Damn, this is bad, this is really bad, bro. That attack that took Shadow by surprise was going to continue with a left hook. Shadow reacted to that left hook and stopped it with his right arm, but he felt pain as soon as he stopped that senseless attack. My arm? I can't feel my left arm. Shadow's left arm, not accumulating enough strength, was dislocated, leaving him vulnerable to the attack, which before connecting fully, Shadow bent down, taking Zargitha's arm with his right arm, which still worked, and with great force threw him to the ground with the help of jiu-jitsu using his martial art. Tisk! I looked at my left arm and tried to move it, but to my surprise my left arm couldn't move at all. Even if it was broken, I just had to heal it with magic, but I can't feel it. I don't feel pain, strangely, even though it's dislocated. I don't feel anything, it's as if my arm never existed. What happened? Ah, that's right. The mist that was released before, I thought it was just meant to cloud my vision or cause me some physical harm or poison me, but I didn't feel anything. But as time passed I noticed that my body was obtaining magic from the void very quickly. Could that mist be, is it scattered magic? In that case I took too much magic and that's why my body is suffering the consequences faster than normal. This is bad. If I continue using void magic then. Lord's debt. After mentioning those words Zargith summoned a light which began to be attracted towards him. The light, although it was minuscule and small, gave off great energy and power. Zargith swallowed that light and his wings had condensed. And the tail that he previously had before his transformation appeared again. Zargith again launched himself against Shadow, who countered his attempt to hit. On the other hand, Hannah, who was analyzing everything that was happening, noticed something peculiar. This doesn't make sense. Zargith charged his empty energy staff trying to hit Shadow, who jumped and countered him with a kick, sending him a few meters away. As soon as Shadow recovered, he felt a slight trembling sensation in his left leg with which he had kicked Zargith. Shadow noticed this. It was a pleasure meeting you, Zargith. You have certainly shown great power, and that is why I must also thank you with the same gesture. So thank you for showing me that I still have a lot to learn. I will take your advice into account, so thank you. The entire void was surrounded by a barrier with multiple cross lines which began to emerge. Each of those figures began to intertwine with each other. Shadow only walked through the air apparently as if it were a platform already made using the barrier as a floor. So it's time to end this. I am. Zargith tried to attack Shadow with his staff, but before the staff could touch Shadow, he had disappeared due to the amount of energy inside. Shadow just continued his walk with a long smile until he reached Zargith, where he whispered a few words. Atomic. A strong glow had illuminated everything again until it formed a small center within all the darkness, which disappeared along with everything else. Ah, genial. Before Hannah could react, the explosion echoed in the place. Although the barrier kept Hannah out, the light blinded her for a few moments. The whole place began to destroy, and the void of the ground was destroyed until a large crater of not hundreds but thousands of meters deep. From the enormous crater a large yellowish light could be seen, which moved slowly as if it were a heart. That light began to come out while the explosion blinded everything. Moments after the explosion, Shadow began to descend from the sky and slowly descend until he touched one of the large rocks in the void, because the ground in the area was practically destroyed, and he could only stand on top of a large peach-shaped rock. So it must be done. The eminence triumphs in the shadows in an unparalleled battle in which he had a worthy opponent. Something's not right. I guess I should go back to Hannah though. Brother, take care. A sharp pain shook Shadow's back for a moment, barely an interval. Visibly, that pain was so strong that Shadow felt it. GG. A large staff with multicolored energy had hit Shadow's back so hard that his back suffered great damage. Shadow was propelled from the sky, spitting blood. The figure was that being from the void. Zargith was back in perfect condition. That staff he was carrying was powered by a large amount of magical energy, which was too much even for Shadow. Zargith's level had increased too much, but something illogical was how Zargith had endured Shadow's atomic, and not dying was something totally illogical. Hannah, seeing the action, couldn't stand it anymore and started running towards Shadow and Zargith. Sure! Why do you like gold so much? Every person has their own tastes, hobbies, or favorite things, right? In my case, it's gold. But what good would it do to have too much? Ha ha ha, you really don't understand, right? Hannah shook her head. I just like collecting gold, that's all. I understand, I guess. But I guess someday I'll be able to find something that even gold can't replace. That sounds very difficult coming from you. It may be, but one day you will understand the meaning of finding something more important than what you originally sought. I can't understand you. You're just saying another one of your weird lines to impress, aren't you? You really have no idea. Whatever. Hannah and Cid were walking in a Bushin festival held by the town where they were. They were still on their way to the town that was their original objective. This was one of their many stops while exploring. While they were both walking, Hannah could notice a family in one of the nearby stalls. Mom, I want one! Ha ha, you want another stuffed animal, right? You can't, you already have several in your house. But I want it. We'll come back later and buy it for you, okay? We can't do it now, we don't have the money yet. They don't always say that, and they don't buy anything from me. A person of average adult height arrived with two paddles joined together before that family who were arguing about that issue. Well, I have 2 lollipops, I'm going to eat them completely, unless a good boy wants one. Bro! Give me one! Give me one! Ha ha ha, you're quite the glutton, aren't you? Here you go. The brother had split the ice pop in half, giving half to his little brother, who angrily refused to accept that half. I want the whole pallet, I'm not a kid anymore. You're still too young to finish it alone. I don't like you treating me like a child. You can accept it or I might eat it too. That's not fair. Ha ha ha, when you're old enough, I promise you'll be able to eat the whole thing. In fact, you'll be able to try all the popsicles you want. Really? Do you promise me? That's right, I completely promise you. And? The boy took the small lollipop and ate it with his brother, who only kept the other half smiling. The little girl stared at that moving scene. For some reason she couldn't feel anything. The moment she looked at that family she only felt an emptiness run through her chest, but a bittersweet feeling passed through her head. Cid continued his walk, and when he looked around he noticed that Hannah was not following him. He turned around, noticing that Hannah had stopped looking at something. "What's wrong with him now?" Cid approached Hannah. When he was about to speak to her, Cid could notice what Hannah was looking at, a family that was spending time together. The girl had only stood there watching how that family interacted. Even though her expression didn't change, even though she didn't feel anything, even though it had no relevance whatsoever, even though it wouldn't help her at all, she just stood there. Without saying a word at all. "I see, I guess that's what happens." Cid sighed and scratched his head as he looked at Hannah. "Do you want me to buy you a souvenir?" Hannah, who was only silent the whole time, slowly turned her gaze towards Cid. Looking at her fixedly, Cid noticed that the little girl had a different expression than the one she had shown a few moments ago. Her gaze had not changed at all. But Cid felt something particular in her. A pain that she could not express with expression or with simple words. It was something completely internal. But his fixation was diverted when Hannah spoke. "Oh, really? Yeah, I was planning on buying something anyway, and..." Cid's attention was diverted when the little girl had taken his shirt. She only looked down. "Come on, I'll buy you something." "Why are you doing this? You have valuable gold, you shouldn't spend it on buying me something I'm not going to use." Cid just sighed and touched Hannah's head. Seeing Cid's action, he was slightly surprised, hiding his change with his head down. Cid for a few moments had remembered the 7 shadows inside Hannah, the time they were also orphans, the time the 7 shadows caused him so many problems, and especially the times they bothered him by asking many unnecessary things and the attention he had to give to each one of them, but also the women they had now become. Certainly he felt nostalgia and a little sadness remembering those times that will never return. It's not bad to spend on unnecessary things from time to time, sometimes the unnecessary is also necessary. I'm in a good mood this time, I'll buy you something, don't change my mind. Hannah, upon hearing the words, only gave a slight smile which faded, returning to her usual expression. In that case, I want the extra large bear that's in that stand. Wait, do you think I'm a millionaire? I said a memory, don't empty my funds. I'm joking. In that case, I just want you to promise me something. Promise something? Whatever happens, whatever happens. If at some point I get out of control and I have no other choice, promise that you will finish me off. Oh? I think you're the only person I know to whom I can ask that wish. For now nothing has happened and I hope it never happens again. This world is really interesting and I don't want to leave before learning more things, but if something does happen, I want the precious memory I have to always live on. Your most precious memory? And what is it? It's a secret. This doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't have even asked you if I was being nice and you thanked me like this. But I guess I'll do it if that's what you really want. That's enough for me. Let's go back. I think I'd like to try the hot springs you talked so much about on the way there. All right. Now I can remember the words I wanted to express that day and never got around to saying. I just felt alone, I just wanted to disappear, but in reality I just wanted to live like any other child with a family that would support me my whole life and not be alone. When you offered me hospitality, I couldn't notice your intentions from the beginning. I could never understand what you really did for me, and I lived in fear when I was with you, even though sometimes you were tough and other times weird. You always gave me a home, and whenever I acted indifferent, a part of you gave me comfort in its own way. And I have only brought you trouble by bringing some strangers who persecute me against you, instead of getting rid of me. Instead of discarding me, you stayed by my side. The most precious memory I have is not something that an object can be worth, that can be broken, or that can go away. It used to be because objects didn't have a life of their own, and that's why I could love them, because they would never leave me. That's why I clung to that cube. But the most precious memory I longed to have was just having a company that would never leave me alone. That I was never born with these powers, just living without this, without any of this. Hannah tried to hit Zargith with her only free hand, but before she could hit Zargith, he hit Hannah, throwing her into the air. Dag! Zargith held Shadow's neck, leaving Shadow immobile, who tried to free himself from the grip, but the strength he had left was considerably less. Zargith pierced Shadow's body with his arm, causing Shadow to spit a large amount of blood from his mouth. Hannah, who had already fallen to the ground, tried to move and tried to reach Shadow. Noticing what had happened, Hannah remained completely silent. Shadow's body fell to the ground. Hannah, who was only a spectator, began to clench her fists. If you are worthy, then the test will be passed. Zargith just dropped Shadow's body and stood still for a few moments. Zargith only began to walk to return to the area where she was originally. Even though Zargith had now completely lost consciousness, and almost seemed like another being completely, she still had that photographic memory that made her fulfill her duties. As Zargith began to walk, he sensed a strange energy which was beginning to emerge. Said energy had disturbed Zargith for a few moments, who turned his gaze towards where he felt that energy. Zargith had observed how that spectator girl from before, which he had barely remembered, was floating. Her wounds began to heal little by little. Suddenly Hannah's long hair began to be held by a network of strange cables that had appeared. Her body also began to be lifted by them. Butterflies began to cover Hannah's clothes and almost all over her body. She began to smile as she focused her gaze on Zargith. In Hannah's hair a small dark star had appeared and a red line of magical power indicative of it as well. Her clothes were now completely dyed black. This isn't over. Hannah began to laugh slowly while at the same time forming a Rubik's Cube in her hands, made entirely of magic. That cube began to form slowly until it finished condensing and forming. As soon as the cube was turned by her fingers, the entire structure of the void began to change abruptly. The entire place began to shake without an apparent explanation. Suddenly the entire place, where apparently nothing existed at all, had now changed. A large cube-like platform had appeared. There were several cubes which began to emerge. The main one where she was located was the new structure of the ground. The entire structure of the void had now changed. It seemed like a new dimension, completely different from what it was before. It no longer seemed to be the void, rather it seemed like something else. It seemed like the fact that it was someone else's dimension. The little girl turned her Rubik's Cube again, causing multiple cubes, some small and others medium in size, to begin to emerge at great speed. All the cubes headed towards Zargith, who only began to destroy them with his magic staff, each cube that tried to connect to him. The cubes increased in size and there were more and more of them, and it was much more difficult to block or destroy them, not to mention that they were very strong. Energy spheres began to emerge around Zargith, who was still blocking said attacks. The speed made it impossible for him to move to dodge them without receiving several in the process. Divine Dark Matter Sphere. The lights surrounded him. Zargith, who previously consumed the accumulation of these lights in one single, this time simply scattered more and more lights. The lights began to illuminate until they finally began to shoot out like projectiles to the cubes, which energy colliding directly with them. Zargith, who was now free thanks to his technique, also his staff, while a strange yellowish energy began to emerge from that crater that still could not repair itself from the damage caused by Shadow's previous atomic. The yellowish energy reached Zargith's staff, who began to recharge with magical energy. Divine Light. Divine Light. A light began to emerge from the staff that Zargith had with himself, when his staff apparently had enough magical energy from the void. Zargith launched himself directly towards Hannah at great speed, arriving in a few moments, and the distance shortened in a few seconds. Zargith tried to connect a blow with his staff, but to his surprise something had stopped his attempt at attack, as if it was holding his staff. Hannah only began to laugh and turn that cube again, which did nothing more than scatter multiple butterflies. Zargith just stood there and touched the ground. The ground began to return to the dimension of emptiness as soon as he began to touch it, slowly spreading reality with it back to normal. However, the ground had once again returned to that previous design that Hannah had indicated. The void being had come to a conclusion. That girl in some way or another had the power to control reality similar to what he does, but the difference is that Zargith's reality control ability applies only in his void space and has certain limits, while Hannah can do it even from a space where normal mana does not exist. And there is only the void option. Hannah had used too much power and her body remained intact without receiving damage like her previous opponent Shadow. That being came to a conclusion. Why does a semi-divine figure like you help a human? The test cannot apply to beings like us. Why are you here? Without receiving an apparent response, Zargith began to float through the skies. His body suddenly began to be pierced by strange puzzle pieces that adhered to it, without the possibility of being able to move. without the possibility of being able to do anything. Zargith had only been trapped. His body had suddenly exploded into 1,000 pieces. The pieces had stained that cube where he was. However, Zargith emerged again, but as soon as his body was rebuilt, he had been pierced by multiple cubes that finished him off again. Zargith was rebuilt again, but now he was incinerated to ashes. He was rebuilt again, and now he had been pierced by multiple needles. Again he was rebuilt, and was decorated alive by multiple butterflies. Every time Zargith died again. In different ways without stopping, everything began to become a loop for Zargith and Hannah. Zargith returned and Hannah only killed him. Each way was worse than the other. Zargith had no time to react. As soon as he was resurrected, he tried to get away and he couldn't do it, as if Hannah didn't have the slightest intention of losing sight of him again. Die and die and die and die and die and die, die and die and die and die and die. Die and die and die and die and die. Everything was becoming an eternal loop for Zargith. The mind of Zargith, who had never before experienced such a sensation, began to take effect. Without the possibility of escaping, without the possibility of using his power to save himself, the only thing that kept him alive was his power of regeneration, and now that was the least useful to him. Zargith began to mentally mention some meaningless words. Divine. Crushed to death. Back. Burned to death. Energy. He is dismembered. Each form worsened and Zargith was trapped in a loop without a constant stop. A small emotion arose from that creature with no total sense of reality. Each attempt Zargith died, he knew it clearly. This no longer had an end. But Zargith had something in mind. The energy of the void, although it was difficult to control because the dimension created by the girl made it difficult for her to access its power, plus the little time she had, Zargith began to spread more and more of the void energy over this new dimension. This with the objective of Zargith being able to use the magic of the void as a key point of resurrection. At this time the magic of the void was scarce and was only in the areas where Zargith moved. It was logical. After all, Zargith's body carried a large amount of magical power of the void in his body. And he was spreading his vital energy, and all the magic he had plus the little that he could still access from outside in the dimension. A human figure began to get up. After coughing a little, the wound on his chest had healed by 60%, at least the hole had been covered, but the damage was still very much in force, and there were a large number of scars covering that wound that was still in the process of healing. With a little cough, the figure wiped the blood that had spilled from his mouth with his sleeve. It seems to have worked. In the last moment before Zargith pierced Shadow, he had managed to move his vital organs with magic. However, doing this action with void magic was an enormous risk, since if he did not control the density and size of the magical energy well, if he tried to move his organs with said magic, he could make them fly or explode consequently. It was something that required a lot of magical control. If I hadn't moved my heart and slightly separated my other organs a little bit, this attack probably would have been the last one I would have been able to see. Shadow got up from the ground with some difficulty. As soon as he got up from the ground, a strong pain emerged in his chest which had barely been restored. As soon as he got up, an unbearable pain began to run through his chest. Shadow began to vomit a large amount of blood. I'm not healed yet. If I move in that unexpected way, the consequences will hit me harder. I can't stand using this dense magic anymore. It's getting worse. Probably my lungs are being affected now by the use of magic. First my left arm and now my lungs. Time is getting shorter. Finishing vomiting the blood that was accumulated due to his large wound, Shadow only began to form a little magic in his chest, trying to cauterize the wound a little faster. I can't use much magic. I must be cautious. If I use too much magical energy, it will probably accelerate the side effects. At least I will be cautious as much as I can so I can feel a little better. Shadow looked around, noticing that the sky had changed completely. Now everything was tinged with a reddish color, but above all, Shadow noticed multiple Rubik's cubes, which were a kind of platforms. He was on one of the many platforms. So the site design has changed again? Interesting. I like the new design though. I can't feel Hannah's presence. Where is that girl? I can feel void energy, but it's faint. Shadow jumped off the platform and started to walk around the Rubik's platforms, trying to find Hannah or the Zargith void being. After so many times starting to die, Zargith had finally achieved his goal. The last stake that pierced his skull had killed him, but instead of resurrecting in the same place, Zargith resurrected in another secluded place. Hannah, who was floating from the sky, tried to find Zargith, barely noticing his location, again pierced him and finished him off. Zargith revived again in another area, trying to find Hannah's blind spot to be able to hide, but as soon as he revived in another area a short time later, he was killed. Reviving in another area had not helped Zargith much, since even if he could change places, Hannah managed to detect where he was. Divine Void. Mist. Zargith began to emanate a large amount of gray mist which began to spread over the entire area. This amount of mist spread quickly. The mist made it difficult for Hannah to see where Zargith was. More than that, the mist for some reason began to make her cough for no apparent reason. The smile that Hannah had drawn on her face had now become a total mystery. She looked at her hand, which had shed blood. The mist of the void is inevitable that you can inhale it. Its function is to contaminate the oxygen you breathe by mixing the particles of the magic of the void, something that you unfortunately cannot use even if you are a semi-divine being like me. Unlike you, this magic is beneficial to me. Without saying a word, Hannah just started throwing multiple cubes in all possible directions, trying to hit that being from the void. The cubes had inevitably managed to kill him on some occasions due to the fast speed. However, taking advantage of the distraction of the mist, Zargith revived in another place away from the mist. Zargith, who was already far away, tried to track the little girl, trying to feel even a bit of her power or her presence. Zargith had noticed that the cubes or attacks did not only come from directional places but sometimes from a single place. Trying to wait for Hannah to open her blind spot again, Zargith only waited until he noticed it. It's there! Zargith took a great leap and headed towards that place where he saw the cubes emerge. Hannah felt Zargith's presence, and before letting him get close to her, the one who was hidden made him explode completely, destroying him into hundreds of pieces. However, Zargith, who had consequently died, had now revived in a new place. Now positioning himself behind the little girl, he connected a strong blow with his divine staff. The blow was stopped by that hidden hand that Zargith could not observe, which was illogical and completely meaningless. Even so, the power of the attack was such that it sent Hannah several meters away. The attack had also reflected a brightness. Shadow, who was running and jumping on the various Rubik's cubes, heard a loud bang which had even reached the area where he was. Thanks to the accumulation of mana at that precise moment, Shadow had managed to locate Zargith, but to his strange uncertainty, another great magical energy could be felt and seemed to be fighting against him. Without knowing what it was about, he now headed towards where he had felt said cloud of magical power. Hannah, who was now exposed, watched as Zargith lunged at her. Before Zargith could touch Hannah, Zargith had been destroyed again without an apparent and logical explanation. A button had been pressed, the dimension had shrunk greatly, and Zargith was now minuscule in size and was only surrounded by cubes with no apparent explanation. Trying to feel Hannah, his attempts were useless. The small one only pressed a huge cube. That huge cube housed the dimension where Zargith was, and Hannah could control that cube. Zargith had inadvertently been sealed by Hannah and was now trying uselessly to get out. As if it were a simple action, Hannah shook the cube, which caused the dimension where Zargith was sealed to begin to rumble. Zargith began to fall in all possible directions. His senses were clouded, he made no sense at all. He only crashed into every cube that was in his path. He revived multiple times and couldn't find anything. Even for Zargith, this was beginning to be very tiring and annoying. Shadow, on the other hand, who had reached the magical energy that he strangely sensed, managed to see Zargith in the distance. To Shadow's surprise, the dimension shook again and he too began to shoot out in all directions, with no apparent sense. What's going on? When I arrived, I was planning to make my epic return as the eminence in the shadows and that I was still alive. But now I find a scene in which the final NPC boss enemy is now crashing everywhere because this place is constantly shaking and causing it. Wait, this magic energy is... Shadow began to remember that old memory he had with Hannah. Hannah and Shadow were outside. Shadow only watched Hannah, who, trying to use her powers in the best way possible, attacked Shadow by throwing multiple structures. Shadow only dodged and destroyed some of the structures before you could touch him in a big way. The energy that Hannah released each time seemed to increase slightly but noticeably. Shadow noticed progress in Hannah. Previously, the girl couldn't even activate her power by will, but now she could do it. But something that Shadow noticed was that Hannah was still hiding something else. That's not enough. Use all your power without fear. You're afraid to attack me. If you hesitate, you won't be able to discover your true potential. I can't do it. I haven't reached that level yet. If I cross the barrier, if I use more power than I'm currently using, I'm afraid of losing control, and I don't want that to happen. I could hurt you, and I don't want to do that. Hurt me? For an eminence in the shadows, there is nothing more humiliating than being told that they can hurt you, and that is why the important secondary character is afraid to use his power. That means that the eminence in the shadows is weak. Shadow approached Hannah. Hannah, with a confused expression, looked at him, but before she could react, Shadow hit Hannah. That was in her imagination. Shadow had only slightly pushed her away with a magical wind shock wave without hurting her much. Shadow only focused his attack on Hannah's mental state as he had done previously with Iris Midgar. Do you really think the eminence in the shadows would die from such a simple attack? This is a joke, right? Ugh. Release your power, otherwise I will make you do it. Shadow launched a gust of wind towards Hannah again, this time with a little more intensity than before, pushing her away. Do it. I can't do that. Shadow launched another gust of wind towards Hannah, sending her flying a few meters again. So you're weak, that's why you fail, why you doubt, that's what happened, right? Weak people are failures, and failures are nothing but useless, so I wasted my time on you. No, that's... Shadow hit Hannah again with that gust of wind, making her fall again. Hannah began to cough from that attack. My brother is right. If I hadn't doubted that time, they probably would still be alive, right? No, if I had only known about my power before and not tried to ignore reality like I'm doing now, I could have done something, not just stood there doing nothing. Do it, free him, show me that you have the power to change your destiny. Are you going to continue showing me the same boring version that only complains and cries about his power instead of using it correctly to change his destiny? Are you going to show me that I was wrong about you and that it was a stupid idea to pick you up that day? Or more, are you going to show me that you were truly serious about wanting to change and that it wasn't just a silly joke? Ah! Hannah began to scream. Her eyes intensified even more of that crimson red. A small line appeared in her hair. That small star had also appeared, and her outfit became darker. Suddenly the whole place began to shake greatly. Various cubes began to surround Shadow, who only shot upwards. Oh! Wow, so this is it! Shadow noticed that Hannah began to float slightly. He noticed a strange magical change in her. The mana that she previously gave off was nothing compared to this. It was a stranger magic. A magic that in a certain way reminded him of Aurora. But different. Nevertheless, the presence was very similar to that time. Hannah only threw several Rubik's cubes at Shadow. Upon seeing said cubes, Shadow summoned his slime sword and began to destroy each one of them. The cubes began to increase greatly. Shadow stopped breaking the cubes and began to run on the various cubes, using them as a trampoline on the large structures. Interesting, I like it. It's an unusual but interesting power. The design is very good. You surprised me, girl. To Shadow's surprise, one of his feet was tied by a thin line. Shadow noticed that the cubes were approaching him at great speed. An explosion began to sound throughout the place. The smoke began to fade, and it was revealed that Shadow was using a magic barrier to protect himself from those cubes. The thread that tied his foot was destroyed by Shadow's magic sword immediately. He only focused his gaze on Hannah and gave a slight smile. Interesting, show me more of what you can do. The magical energy is similar to that day, so it means the brat has. The dimension began to be surrounded by multiple black tentacles which began their attack towards Shadow as well as Zargith. Zargith began to destroy some with his staff, but even he inevitably fell sooner or later. Shadow simply began to stop each one of them, but a slight pain in his chest invaded him. Realizing that he could not continue like this any longer, Shadow had then come to a conclusion. The power he's using isn't the same one he showed me that time. Is this what he meant by out of control? Kids these days are a nuisance. Shadow sighed, and his only open eye began to glow purple as a flame began to come out of it. The flame condensed and his eye returned to that crimson red, Overdrive was activated again, but this time the power was different. Shadow looked up at the sky, noticing something strange. The magic nets apparently passed through the place where they were. One dimension upon another dimension. Shadow began to charge his slime sword with a large amount of violet-colored magical power with slight dark flashes. This release of magical power pushed away the tentacles that tried to stop him as if they were disintegrated. As soon as they approached that accumulation, Shadow launched himself towards the sky, uttering the following words. Rising. Atomic. Shadow hit the non-existent sky that housed nothing and released a large amount of magical power located in a single point. The accumulation managed to apparently illogically pass through the sky, noticing another completely different sky. The sky looked gray like before where he and Zargith previously fought. After that hole the sky began to regenerate, but before being able to continue, Shadow flew over the crack, crossing the entire dimension. Zargith, who saw everything, tried to escape in the same way, managing to get out through the crack generated by Shadow. Both had returned to the world of emptiness, Hannah only at 2, and began to house more cubes to throw them. Shadow only frowned and launched himself towards Hannah without letting her finish launching her special attack. Shadow tried to hit Hannah, who only stopped his attack with a mysterious invisible hand from behind. Hannah moved away from Shadow. However, Shadow followed her and uttered a few words while his sword was filled with magical power. I am Recovery Atomic! An explosion was generated and the entire void was illuminated by that blinding light. After the blinding light passed, Hannah had lost consciousness and began to fall from the sky. Shadow held her, carrying her on top of him. Good job, Hannah! For the second time Shadow had said Hannah's name, something that strangely happened. Now, it's the turn of the eminence in the shadows. Shadow descended to the ground and tore off his slime cloak, which began to regenerate after that action. He used it as a blanket on Hannah, surrounding her with his slime cloak, which was his cape. Shadow looked at Hannah with a slight smile barely visible. The slime covered Hannah as if it were alive by its own will and trying to protect her. Shadow focused his gaze again on Zargith, who had only remained expectant. Shadow, who had the overdrive ability activated, observed something strange behind Zargith. A strange accumulation of magical energy was gathered in a single point. Zargith focused his gaze on Shadow for a few moments until he decided to throw himself at Shadow. Shadow threw himself at Zargith in the same way. The slime sword and the staff had collided one on top of the other. Zargith attacked Shadow with his other arm. Shadow, who could no longer use his left arm at a disadvantage and was only fighting with one arm, took a great leap and left the clash of swords with Zargith's staff. Raising his sword, Shadow hurt Zargith, cutting him in two. However, Zargith's body began its healing process. Before this reaction, Shadow, who had already landed on the ground, again took off a great burst of cuts, leaving Zargith completely in pieces. Shadow began to notice that the pieces began to join together. With the overdrive ability, Shadow was able to analyze that the ground was emerging strange energy which regenerated Zargith. If my theory is correct, this NPC must have some weak point. He regenerates, and I don't notice any magical intervention of his own that makes him heal in that way. Instead, it seems as if this place will begin to do so. In that case, does that mean that thing I saw a few moments ago shining on the ground, is it the core? Zargith attacked Shadow, who covered himself with his sword and flew a few meters. Interesting, I had a good fight. I'll probably never forget the fight that made me be like this more than 2 times in one day. First you and then the brat Coo. You two have made me have fun like never before in my life. But it's time to end this. Shadow began to float in the air, extending his 2 arms. Although his left arm was completely immobile, he made it stand up with the help of his slime suit, which forced him to lift it because he could not do it anymore. Raising both arms in the sky, he gave a smile as a thunderous crash fell upon him. A magical barrier was formed again, and Hannah, for obvious reasons, was outside the barrier to avoid damage. The barrier began to form magical circles intertwined with each other. Behold the divine power of the eminence in the shadows, ha 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 ha. Shadow raised his sword with his right arm and began to gather magical energy from it in one place. I am Zargith, noticing that explosion of magical energy which began to conjure his ability. In his left hand he began to gather dark magic, and in his right hand light magic. Divine. Dark matter sphere. Divine Light. Luz Divina. Both attacks began to emerge and shake the entire void area completely. The void, no, the entire world and dimensions began to tremble at the magical explosion that was being released. Still haven't found anything? Not yet, Zeta-sama, but... Before Number could continue her report, a rumble on the planet interrupted her. Such a rumble had even caught Zeta's attention. What's going on? Kia! What the hell is going on? Is it an earthquake? Zeta only gave a slight sigh and a smile. So you've taken care of it, you're as strong as ever, Master. In Alexandria? An elf with long yellow hair was supervising some documents until she felt a great tremor that made her move abruptly from her seat. This is... Shadow-sama, before we say goodbye, I focus my gaze here. Epsilon pointed at her breasts, making Beta upset by this revelation, still unable to believe what was happening. That's not true. Ha! Admit it, Shadow-sama is... Before Epsilon could continue, the rumble on the entire planet had shaken everything, and Epsilon and Beta were surprised but immediately deduced who the cause could be. What if... He's Shadow-sama after all? In another place, far from everything, in a forest, more specifically. Charity! Hiya! Multiple men began to flee from a girl with violet eyes and long ears with fur and a long black tail. In turn, accompanied by a black uniform, Shadow Garden's mascot, Delta, was in action. Jajajajaha! Delta began to finish them all off until the tremor stopped her. Slightly surprised, Delta stopped. However, the strong sense of Delta warned her of something, so she gave a smile. Bossa is amazing, desu. In that case, Delta won't be far behind. But what is this? Is this the end of the world? Many people left their homes with doubts, worries, and more mixed feelings about that earthquake that was shaking the entire world. In a completely different dimension, a hooded subject with a white hood and red eyes began to look towards the sky when he felt that tremor that inevitably shook everything. That subject only uttered those words. TSK, this tremor, I can't sense any magical interference occurring anywhere and deducing the magnitude, Shadow, huh? Damn you! Nova-sama, what's going on? It's nothing, Lucy. Don't worry, it's just an earthquake. It's a natural phenomenon that occurs all over the world. It will pass. I understand, Nova-sama. In a completely different dimension, those 7 figures which were beginning to cry over a body which was apparently dead were cleared away when that tremor shook their bodies. Yeah? Beta questions himself with doubt. What the hell is going on now? Zeta asked with annoyance. But this is... Epsilon wondered. Is that damn comeback? I'm going to kill him. Calm down, Zeta, I don't think that's it. Calm down? Shadow-sama is dead, the master is dead, and you asked me to calm down? If you just get angry, what the hell are you going to win? Will that help at all? I'm trying to find a solution. No, you can't provide any solution. Your weakness is the cause of this. Zeta! Alpha-sama tried hard too, not even all of us could do anything. Gunma called Zeta's attention with annoyance, generating an awkward silence. In a completely different dimension. So, Cid Kagenou, do you accept Alpha-sama as your lawful wife? What are you talking about? This is a fake wedding. I have to give her points for such a tremendous performance. I accept. The 7 shadows who were in the background upon hearing those words collapsed mentally. And you Alpha-sama accept Shadow-sa no Cid Kagenou as your lawful husband until death do you part? I accept. He declared the beginning of this wedding and may kiss the bride. Hiya, that's not fair, I wanted to be Shadow-sama's wife. Some numbers sighed with much jealousy. The shadows who were watching as spectators also thought the same with disappointment. Are you expecting a kiss? No, that's not a kiss, no, that would be too much act. Before continuing his thoughts, Alpha took the initiative and kissed Cid, surprising Cid. They all began to applaud and celebrate the kiss they had seen a little while ago. The shadows only looked away without being able to see what was happening, although Delta was the only one of the 6 shadows to be completely happy for Alpha. Now have 100 children, Disa. Delta! Cid sighed and scratched his head. Gosh, they took it very seriously. I'm still surprised by that level of acting. Now that we're an arranged marriage, even if it's just pretending you're mine. Ah, yes, of course. Alpha gave a smile only while Cid tried to look away. The wedding was interrupted as soon as the tremor began to resonate throughout the world. The entire world began to shake. Both the 7 shadows and Numbers were confused, while Alpha and Cid did not understand what was happening. But what about this? According to reports, no tremor was forecast. Hiya! Oh, of course there couldn't be a lack of drama at the wedding. I wish this earthquake would kill me. Back to the void. Both lights had collided and the whole field was illuminated by those lights. That collided with each other one on top of the other without ceasing until the light ended completely. After the flash ended, only Zargith could be seen. His skin, now stone-colored, began to slowly disintegrate in front of Shadow, who just stared at him. Congratulations, you have managed to overcome the test that ties the void with the non-existent desire. Your human has been the first. Thank you, truly a worthy opponent, probably you. Before finishing his sentence, Zargith disintegrated and his stone remains. Shadow only looked at the scene without celebrating his apparent victory against Zargith in a cliché way as he normally would. Instead, Shadow only slightly bowed his body to pay respect to someone who was a great rival and made him have a fight where he truly had a bad time and was able to learn more. Zargith, or should I say being of the void, the eminence in the shadows, recognizes this duel as equally worthy. Thus the struggle between the eminence in the shadows and the being from the void had culminated. Shadow began to descend from the sky next to Hannah, who was still on the ground. She had been protected by Shadow from receiving the atomic directly or from the shock attack that there was between the atomic and the dark energies of the void being Zargith. Shadow only sighed and lay down for a few moments on the ground. His slime suit had now been hidden and the void magic had been deactivated by Shadow. But to Cid's surprise, the place began to shake again, preparing for what was coming. A voice echoed in the place, which in a few moments had changed completely, and was now entirely light. You human who has passed the test of emptiness, you will be granted the opportunity to make a wish. The voice emerged from the back of the room, but there was apparently no owner of that voice. That voice did not give off either a masculine or feminine tone, dreaming totally indifferent to both. I had forgotten about the wish. But what does it matter? I don't need it anymore anyway, although. You are warned, human, that once the test is completed, the test will be closed for those who are worthy and can never be performed again. The seal will be sealed. So never you or that girl who is next to you will be able to come here again. This as a fair measure so that every being in this universe has the opportunity to receive the wish they want. Could this guy also be an NPC final boss with the same powers as the previous one? Incorrect. So he can read minds. I was born naturally into this world, as were other magical creatures, the being of the void, the creatures that had the underworld Diabolos, and that girl at your side is also. We are natural forces that have existed for thousands of years, created by the world with a purpose made. Diabolos is chaos. The void is for the test that leads you to me, and if you are worthy you are granted a wish. And other creatures that represent harmony, peace, terror, destruction equal. With their fixed destiny. Interesting. It's a good lore/story. Wait, girl? So Hannah is also. She is the vessel of a semi-divine being like me, which grants her powers. However, I don't know its purpose and objective because this is only the first time I've seen it. So he is not omniscient. So human, what is your wish? I guess I don't need my wish anymore. What I wanted has come true without needing the wish then. I could ask for infinite gold. After all, my worries about funds would disappear, but part of what makes this fun is that I have a fixed goal. And certainly easy is not for me. Cid looked at Hannah for a few moments, and gave a long sigh. You're going to owe me one. Are you sure that will be your final wish? And a great light began to emerge, leaving the whole place completely illuminated. Cid closed his eyes until he noticed that the figure was no longer there. And now they were outside the void area, more precisely above the entrance by the stairs they walked to from the beginning until they arrived. A group of girls from the shadows noticed the arrival of that teenager accompanied by that mysterious girl. This presence. Zeta-sama Shadow-sama's energy has. Fast. The entire Zeta faction headed towards where they felt the familiar magical power that they were so familiar with and had been pursuing for so long without hesitation. Cid tried to move his left arm, but it again did not respond. His lungs certainly still hurt. And his left leg had suffered damage. Despite this, Cid only sat on a large rock and looked at the sky while Hannah, who was next to him, slept deeply still with the slime blanket that Cid had provided her. I noticed some slight changes in my thoughts while I was on this journey of submerged self-discovery. Since time immemorial, humans have sought to grow, to advance, to transcend their limits. Some do it for glory, others for power, and a few simply because they can't stop. It's a necessity, an instinct. Evolution is not only physical, but also mental and spiritual. Every obstacle is a test, every fall, an opportunity. The weak break, the strong rise. But those who truly understand know that true evolution doesn't happen in a single instant, but in the accumulation of thousands of moments, of choices and sacrifices. Humans change. Sometimes they become stronger, sometimes weaker. But those who understand the art of the shadow, those who seek true power, they never stop evolving. Because in the darkness, away from the eyes of the world, is where true growth takes shape. Power, I've always sought it. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was the only thing that belonged to me. Strength is just, strength is undeniable. With it, one can forge one's own path, become what one wishes to be. But there is something that power cannot grant, something that only those who have not lost it can understand. I was always alone, and at some point, I stopped questioning it. I walked in the shadows, creating a world where no one could reach me, where only my will dictated the course. But there was a moment, fleeting, insignificant in eternity, when I felt something different. Something that was perhaps the closest thing to real life. If only I had reached out, if only I had taken a step out of the darkness, maybe my story would have been different. But that chance, I let it pass. And now, even if the emptiness weighs heavy, even if the silence becomes deafening, there is no going back. It's too late to change it. So I'll keep going, just like I always have. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the past can't be undone, and the feelings I once ignored no longer have a place on the path I've chosen. Power is all I have left. The shadow is my only refuge. And though for a moment I thought I felt something close to real life, I'm not so naive as to cling to what I've already lost. I will keep walking in the darkness, because that is the only destiny left to me.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.